Welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. It's very good to have you here. Before everything settles into place, it would be lovely to know where in the world you're watching from tonight. Maybe you're tucked beneath a blanket, resting on the sofa after a long day, listening quietly with the lights low, or letting this play in the background while the rest of the world grows a little softer. Wherever you are, hopefully you feel comfortable, calm, and ready to wander gently into the strange, familiar machinery of being alive. If you enjoy these slow, relaxing journeys through science and would like more of them, leaving a like and subscribing is a wonderfully helpful way to support the channel. And to everyone already subscribed, thank you. Truly. Your support helps keep this little corner of science drifting along, one sleepy question at a time. Now, tonight's subject may sound simple at first, because being alive is something the body tends to do without asking for applause. It does not usually send a polite notification every time your heart beats, your lungs exchange gases, your kidneys adjust your salt balance, or your brainstem quietly keeps watch like a very dedicated night guard with absolutely no interest in taking annual leave, which is probably for the best. But beneath that ordinary feeling of simply existing, there is a constant, astonishing coordination taking place. Blood is moving, signals are travelling, cells are burning fuel, hormones are carrying instructions, immune cells are patrolling, heat is being managed, waste is being removed, and somehow, through all of it, the body keeps the inner world steady enough for thought, movement, memory, sleep, and life to continue. So let's begin, shall we? How does the human body stay alive, and how much quiet work is happening inside you right now, without you ever needing to notice? The human body can sometimes feel like a single thing, one person, one shape, one breathing, blinking, thinking presence moving through the world. But beneath that simple feeling is not one single life force, not one master switch, and not one hidden flame quietly burning behind the ribs. The body stays alive through regulation. It survives because millions upon millions of processes are constantly being adjusted, corrected, balanced, and brought back into range. At this very moment, without any need for attention, air is moving in and out of the lungs. The heart is pushing blood through branching vessels. The digestive system is breaking down food or preparing for the next meal. Nerves are carrying signals faster than conscious thought can follow. Hormones are drifting through the bloodstream with slow chemical instructions. Immune cells are checking for damage, invasion, and suspicious behavior. Heat is being made, moved, saved, or released. Tiny injuries are being repaired. Muscles are maintaining posture even during stillness. Cells are taking in nutrients, using oxygen, building proteins, clearing waste, and quietly continuing the ancient work of being alive. It is all so ordinary that it is easy to miss how strange it is. A living body is not like a stone, stable because nothing much is happening. It is stable because an astonishing amount is happening all the time. It is more like a candle flame than a brick wall, except even that comparison is unfair to the body, because a candle has never had to regulate blood sugar, remember a password, fight off a virus, and digest toast at the same time. The central idea behind this constant balance is called homeostasis. The word describes the body's ability to maintain a relatively stable internal environment even as the outside world changes. The temperature of the room may shift, food may arrive or not arrive, water may be plentiful or scarce, the body may be resting, walking, sweating, shivering, laughing, healing, or sleeping. Yet inside, certain conditions must remain within narrow limits. Cells need the right amount of water. The blood needs the right balance of salts. Oxygen must keep arriving. Carbon dioxide must be removed. Acidity must be controlled. Temperature cannot drift too far. Blood pressure must be high enough to deliver supplies. but not so high that it damages the very vessels carrying them. The 19th century French physiologist Claude Bernard helped shape this way of thinking. He described the importance of the internal environment, the carefully maintained fluid world in which the body's cells live. Later, the American physiologist Walter Cannon developed the concept of homeostasis more fully, giving science one of its most useful words for understanding life. The body, in this view, is not merely reacting randomly. It is constantly comparing conditions, detecting changes, and making corrections. One of the most important tools for doing this is negative feedback. Despite the name, negative feedback is not the body leaving a harsh review of its own organs. It simply means that when something moves too far in one direction, the body responds in a way that pushes it back toward a healthy range. A change is sensed, a correction is made, and the original disturbance is reduced. Body temperature offers a familiar example. If the body becomes too hot, sweat glands release fluid onto the skin, and as that sweat evaporates, it carries heat away. Blood vessels near the surface of the skin widen, allowing more warm blood to pass close to the outside air. If the body becomes too cold, those surface vessels narrow, helping conserve heat deeper inside. Muscles may begin to shiver, producing warmth through rapid contractions. None of this requires a committee meeting. The body detects the change and adjusts. Blood sugar works in a similar balancing pattern. After a meal, glucose from digested carbohydrates enters the blood. The pancreas releases insulin, which helps cells take in glucose and encourages storage for later use. When blood sugar falls, another pancreatic hormone, glucagon, helps release stored glucose back into the bloodstream. The goal is not to keep blood sugar perfectly frozen at one exact value, but to keep it within a workable range, steady enough for the brain, muscles, and organs to function. Blood pressure is also constantly adjusted. Sensors in blood vessels detect stretching as pressure rises or falls. Signals travel to control centers in the nervous system, and the heart, blood vessels, and kidneys respond. The heart may beat faster or slower. Blood vessels may widen or narrow. The kidneys may conserve or release more salt and water over time. Breathing rate is regulated too, especially in response to carbon dioxide. When carbon dioxide rises, the brainstem encourages deeper or faster breathing, helping remove it from the blood and restore chemical balance. These examples show a larger truth. The body is not a machine with one control panel. It is a network of overlapping control systems. Some react in seconds, some unfold over minutes, others take hours, days, or longer. Nerves are fast, hormones are slower. Immune responses can begin quickly, but may develop in stages. Tissue repair follows a carefully arranged sequence. Bone remodels over months and years. Life is not held together by one rhythm, but by many rhythms layered together. To understand how this works, it helps to picture the body as a set of nested levels. At the smallest scale are atoms such as carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, calcium, sodium, potassium, and iron. These atoms form molecules including water, proteins, fats, carbohydrates, and deoxyribonucleic acid. Molecules gather into tiny structures inside cells. Cells become the basic living units of the body, each with its own boundary, chemistry, energy needs, and specialized work. Cells then organize into tissues. Muscle tissue contracts. Nervous tissue sends signals. Epithelial tissue lines surfaces and forms barriers. Connective tissue supports, binds, cushions, and protects. Tissues combine into organs such as the heart, lungs, brain, liver, kidneys, stomach, skin, and bones. Organs work together in organ systems, including the respiratory system, circulatory system, digestive system, nervous system, endocrine system, immune system, urinary system, muscular system, and skeletal system. Together, these systems form the whole organism. The important point is that no level survives alone. A heart cell depends on oxygen delivered by the lungs and blood. The lungs depend on muscles controlled by nerves. Nerves depend on blood sugar and oxygen. Blood sugar depends on digestion, the liver, the pancreas, hormones, and stored fuel. The kidneys depend on blood flow, but also help control that blood flow by managing water, salts, and pressure. The skin protects the internal world but relies on circulation, immunity, nerves, and repair cells to stay alive. Every part is both independent and dependent, local and connected. This is why the body can never truly pause. Even in deep rest, the stillness is only on the surface. During sleep, the heart continues to pump. The lungs continue to exchange gases. The brainstem continues to regulate breathing, heart rate, and basic survival functions. Cells continue to use energy. The liver continues processing chemicals. The kidneys continue filtering blood. The immune system continues surveillance. The skin continues repairing tiny damage. The brain continues sorting, regulating, and shifting through different patterns of activity. Sleep is not a shutdown. It is more like dimming the lights while the maintenance crew gets on with the quieter jobs. And this constant activity has to be carefully managed, because life depends on balance rather than maximum effort. The body does not want the fastest heart rate, the highest temperature, the strongest immune response, or the most glucose in the blood. More is not always better. In biology, survival usually depends on enough. Enough oxygen, enough pressure, enough heat, enough water, enough defense, enough rest, enough repair. The living body is full of limits, thresholds, compromises, and trade-offs. That is the quiet agreement of the body. Each part does its own work, but none of it makes sense alone. Breathing brings in oxygen, but circulation must carry it. Digestion gathers fuel, but cells must convert it. Nerves sense change, but muscles and glands must respond. Hormones send instructions, but organs must receive and interpret them. The immune system protects, but it must avoid attacking the body it is meant to defend. Temperature is regulated, waste is cleared, tissues are rebuilt, and movement is coordinated from head to toe. So the answer to how the human body stays alive begins here, with regulation. Not one miracle, but 1,000 careful adjustments. Not stillness, but controlled motion. Not a single command, but a living conversation between brain, blood, breath, organs, cells, skin, bones, muscles, hormones, and nerves. The body survives by sensing what has changed, responding before things drift too far, protecting the delicate inner world, fueling its cells, cooling and warming itself, cleaning its fluids, repairing its tissues, and rebuilding just enough to keep going. Most of this happens quietly beneath awareness, which is probably wise. If every heartbeat, enzyme reaction, immune patrol, salt adjustment, and microscopic repair job had to be consciously approved, nobody would get through breakfast. Instead, the body carries on with its hidden agreements, maintaining the conditions that allow a person to think, sleep, move, dream, heal, and simply be here. At the base of the head, just above the neck, the brain narrows into a structure that looks far less dramatic than the wrinkled thinking parts above it. It does not usually get the glamour of memory, imagination, language, or clever ideas about where the house keys have gone. Yet this lower region is one of the most important pieces of living tissue in the body. It is the brain stem, and it helps keep the body alive moment by moment, whether a person is awake, asleep, distracted, daydreaming, or trying very hard not to fall asleep during a documentary about Victorian plumbing. The brainstem is often described as an ancient part of the nervous system, not because it is simple, but because many of its basic functions are shared across vertebrate life. It sits between the brain and the spinal cord, acting as a vital passageway and control center. Signals traveling between the body and the higher brain often pass through it. At the same time, the brainstem helps manage automatic functions that are too important to leave entirely to conscious decision. Breathing rhythm, heart rate, blood pressure, swallowing, coughing, vomiting, and basic alertness all depend on networks in this region. The brainstem is usually divided into three main parts: the medulla oblongata, the pons, and the midbrain. The medulla oblongata is the lowest part, closest to the spinal cord. It is deeply involved in breathing, heart rate, blood vessel control, swallowing, coughing, sneezing, and vomiting. The pons sits above it and helps coordinate breathing patterns, sleep, facial movement, hearing, balance, and communication between different parts of the brain. The midbrain lies above the pons and plays roles in eye movement, sound and visual reflexes, movement control, and alertness. These names can sound like the body has quietly borrowed its vocabulary from an old map, draw, but the basic idea is straightforward. The brainstem is not where a person writes poetry, plans holidays, or wonders whether one more biscuit is medically necessary. It is where many of the body's essential background routines are watched, adjusted, and kept running. Breathing is one of the clearest examples. A person can choose to take a deep breath, or hold their breath for a short while, but breathing is not normally managed by conscious effort. If it were, sleep would become a rather serious design flaw. Instead, networks in the brainstem generate and adjust the rhythm of breathing. The medulla oblongata is especially important because it helps monitor carbon dioxide in the blood, or more precisely the chemical changes linked to carbon dioxide levels. When cells use energy, they produce carbon dioxide as a waste gas. This carbon dioxide travels in the blood and influences acidity. If carbon dioxide rises too much, the blood becomes more acidic. Chemoreceptors, including important sensors connected to the brainstem, detect these changes. In response, the medulla helps increase breathing depth or breathing rate, allowing the lungs to remove more carbon dioxide. At the same time, oxygen continues to be drawn into the body. The system is elegant because the strongest everyday drive to breathe is often not a lack of oxygen, but the build-up of carbon dioxide and the body's need to keep blood chemistry stable. The heart is also under continuous influence from brainstem control. The heart has its own internal rhythm generated by specialized cardiac cells, but the nervous system can speed it up or slow it down depending on what the body needs. During rest, the heart can settle into a calmer rhythm. During movement, stress, heat, cold, pain, or fear, it can be pushed to deliver blood more quickly. Blood pressure is adjusted in the same broad system, with sensors in major blood vessels sending information to the brainstem about pressure changes. The brainstem then helps alter heart rate, the strength of heart contraction, and the width of blood vessels. This wider automatic regulation is part of the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system controls many functions that happen without direct conscious command. It has two major divisions that are often described as the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. The sympathetic division helps prepare the body for action. It can increase heart rate, widen airways, redirect blood toward muscles, release stored fuel, widen the pupils, and reduce some digestive activity. The parasympathetic division supports calmer maintenance. It helps slow the heart, encourage digestion, support gland activity, and restore a more settled state after activity or stress. These two divisions are sometimes simplified as fight or flight and rest and digest, and that can be useful as a starting point. But the real system is more subtle. The body is not usually choosing between total panic and complete relaxation. as if every moment were either a tiger attack or a nap under a soft blanket. Instead, sympathetic and parasympathetic influences are constantly blended, adjusted, increased, reduced, and balanced. Blood vessels change width, digestion speeds or slows, sweating begins or fades, pupils widen or narrow. The bladder, gut, heart, lungs, glands, and skin all receive automatic instructions that help the body fit the situation. The brainstem is also involved in protective reflexes. Swallowing moves food and liquid safely from the mouth toward the stomach. Coughing helps clear the airways. Gagging and vomiting may be unpleasant, but they can protect the body from choking or from harmful substances that need to be expelled. These responses are not graceful in a dinner party sense, but biology has never cared much about etiquette when survival is on the table. The British neurophysiologist Charles Scott Sherrington helped shape modern understanding of how the nervous system coordinates reflexes, movement, and bodily control. His work helped reveal that the nervous system is not just a bundle of wires, but an organized network in which signals are integrated, selected, and coordinated. Reflexes show this beautifully. They allow the body to respond quickly, sometimes before conscious thought fully understands what has happened. A hand pulls away from a hot surface, the airway closes during swallowing, the pupils adjust to light. The body's not waiting politely for a written request from awareness. Basic alertness also depends partly on brainstem systems. Networks often described as the reticular formation help regulate wakefulness, attention, and the transition between sleep and waking. This does not mean the brainstem creates thought by itself, but it helps maintain the level of arousal that allows the thinking brain to function. Consciousness is not a lamp sitting in one spot. It depends on many systems working together, and the brainstem provides some of the essential background conditions that keep the lamp lit. This is why the brainstem feels like a night watchman within the body. Quiet, old, and mostly unnoticed, it keeps checking the gates. It listens to the chemistry of the blood. It helps pace the breath. It steadies the heart. It adjusts pressure in the vessels. It helps protect the airway. It supports swallowing, coughing, vomiting, and wakefulness. It does not ask for applause, and it would probably find applause a little distracting. Survival begins here not with deliberate decision-making, but with continuous sensing and adjustment. The body does not wait for awareness to notice rising carbon dioxide before changing the breath. It does not ask permission before tightening blood vessels to support blood pressure. It does not require a thoughtful essay before triggering a cough. The most important commands often happen before conscious life catches up. And this is one of the quiet truths of being alive. A person may feel like the mind is in charge, but much of survival is handled below the surface, by systems that are older, faster, and less dramatic than thought. The brainstem keeps the body close to balance, breath by breath and heartbeat by heartbeat, so that the rest of life has somewhere safe to unfold. The body does not survive by simply existing inside the world. It survives by constantly noticing the world. Every moment information is arriving from light, sound, pressure, movement, temperature, pain, smell, taste, and the quiet position of the body itself. Some of this information becomes conscious experience. Much of it does not. Either way, the senses are doing far more than decorating life with colour, music, flavour, and the comforting knowledge that a freshly baked biscuit is nearby and deserves serious scientific attention. They're helping the body stay oriented, protected, balanced, and ready to respond. The senses are often described as though they are mainly for enjoyment. Sight gives shape and colour. Hearing gives voices and music. Smell and taste give warning, memory, and the small happiness of food that has not been tragically overboiled. Touch gives warmth, texture, pressure, and closeness. But underneath all of that, the senses are survival systems. They help the body detect danger before damage happens. They guide movement through space. They help identify food, smoke, spoiled substances, injury, heat, cold, balance, and the position of the limbs. Without sensory information, the nervous system would still be active, but it would be working in darkness, with no reliable map. Vision is one of the most obvious examples. The eyes are light-detecting organs, built to gather information from the environment and send it inward for interpretation. Light enters through the cornea, passes through the pupil, is focused by the lens, and reaches the retina at the back of the eye. The retina contains specialized photoreceptor cells called rods and cones. Rods are especially useful in dim light and help detect brightness and movement. Cones work best in brighter light and allow color vision and fine detail. These photoreceptors convert light into electrical signals that travel through retinal nerve cells and then along the optic nerve toward the brain. Eventually, much of this visual information reaches the visual cortex at the back of the brain, where signals are processed into edges, motion, contrast, depth, color, and recognizable objects. What feels like simply seeing is really a careful construction. The brain is not passively receiving a finished picture. It is assembling one constantly and rapidly from patterns of light. This matters for survival because vision helps coordinate almost everything the body does in open space. It guides the feet around obstacles. It helps the hands reach for a cup without knocking it into a tragic little indoor waterfall. It helps recognize faces, read expressions, judge distance, avoid injury, notice movement, and detect changes in the environment. Even posture depends partly on vision. When the eyes are closed, the body may sway slightly more because one stream of balance information has gone quiet. Hearing is another form of orientation. Sound begins as vibration. Moving air presses against the eardrum, and this movement passes through tiny bones in the middle ear called the malleus, incus, and stapes. These bones transmit vibration into the cochlea, a spiral-shaped structure in the inner ear filled with fluid. Inside the cochlea, delicate hair cells bend in response to waves moving through that fluid. Different regions respond more strongly to different pitches, allowing the nervous system to sort vibration into meaningful sound. The signals then travel through the auditory nerve to the brain, where they become voices, footsteps, music, thunder, warning calls, and the suspicious creak in the hallway that is almost certainly just the house cooling down, but the brain likes to file a report anyway. Hearing is useful because sound can arrive from places the eyes are not looking. A person can hear a car before seeing it, hear someone calling from another room, or detect a sudden crash behind them. Sound extends awareness beyond the narrow forward focus of vision. The ear also contains one of the body's great balance systems. Near the cochlea is the vestibular system, which includes the semicircular canals and otolith organs. The semicircular canals are arranged in different planes, and they contain fluid that shifts when the head rotates. Hair cells inside these canals detect that movement. This allows the brain to sense when the head is turning, nodding, tilting, or changing direction. The otolith organs help detect linear acceleration and gravity. They contain tiny crystals that shift with movement and head position, gently tugging on hair cells. Together, these inner ear systems help the brain know where the head is in space. They work with vision, muscles, joints, and the cerebellum to maintain balance. When the vestibular system is disrupted, the world may seem to spin even when the body is still. That strange feeling shows just how much ordinary stability depends on tiny movements of fluid inside the head. Yet some of the most important senses are less famous than sight and hearing. Proprioception is the body's internal sense of position and movement. It allows the brain to know where the limbs are without needing to look at them. Receptors in muscles, tendons, and joints send continuous information about stretch, tension, angle, and movement. Because of proprioception, a person can touch their nose with their eyes closed, walk without staring at their knees, chew without watching their jaw, and adjust posture while standing in a queue, wondering why the person at the front appears to be negotiating a small international treaty. Proprioception is essential because movement requires constant correction. Walking is not just falling forward elegantly and hoping for the best, although it can look that way on ice. Each step involves shifting weight, sensing ground contact, adjusting muscle force, and predicting where the body will be a fraction of a second later. The nervous system uses proprioceptive information to keep motion smooth and coordinated. Without it, movement becomes clumsy, uncertain, and heavily dependent on vision. Touch also gives the body a detailed map of its relationship with the world. Pressure receptors in the skin help detect contact, grip, texture, vibration, and stretch. They help the hand hold a fragile object without crushing it or dropping it. They help the feet sense the ground. They help the body know when clothing, bedding, water, wind, or another person is touching the skin. Touch is not one simple sense, but a collection of signals that help the brain understand the boundary between self and environment. Temperature sensing adds another layer of protection. Thermoreceptors detect warmth and cold in the skin and deeper tissues. This information helps guide behavior and automatic regulation. If the skin detects cold, the body may seek warmth, conserve heat, or begin shivering. If it detects heat, the body may move away, sweat, or increase blood flow near the skin. Temperature is not just a comfort issue. Proteins, enzymes, membranes, and cells all work best within certain ranges, so detecting heat and cold helps protect the chemistry of life. Pain is perhaps the least welcome sense, but one of the most protective. Pain signals often begin with nociceptors, specialized receptors that respond to potentially damaging mechanical force, extreme temperature, inflammation, or chemical irritation. Pain can be sharp, dull, burning, aching, throbbing, or hard to describe, because it is not just a simple alarm bell. It is shaped by the nervous system, the immune system, attention, memory, emotion, and context. But its basic protective role is clear. It warns the body that something may be wrong. Pain is not pleasant, and in chronic conditions it can become a serious problem in its own right. But in its most basic survival role, pain helps prevent damage from getting worse. It makes the hand pull away from heat. It encourages rest after injury. It draws attention to infection, strain, pressure, or internal trouble. Discomfort in this sense is not always an enemy. Sometimes it is the body's rather blunt maintenance department, arriving with a clipboard and absolutely no bedside manner. Smell and taste also belong in this survival map. Smell can detect smoke, spoiled food, chemicals, body odors, flowers, rain on dry ground, and the familiar scent of home. Taste helps identify sweetness, saltiness, sourness, bitterness, and savory richness, all of which connect in broad ways to energy, minerals, acidity, possible toxins, and protein-rich foods. These senses are deeply tied to memory and emotion, but they also help decide what enters the body, which is a fairly important decision for a digestive system that prefers not to be surprised by poison. All these sensory systems feed into the nervous system, where the brain constantly builds a working model of the body and the world around it. That model is never perfect, but it is useful. It tells the body where the floor is, where the hands are, whether the head is moving, whether the air is cold, whether a sound is approaching, whether the muscles are stretched, whether the stomach is full, and whether something hurts enough to demand attention. Staying alive depends on this stream of information. The body must sense before it can respond. It must detect change before it can correct it. It must know something about the outside world and something about its internal state. Vision, hearing, balance, touch, temperature, pain, taste, smell, and proprioception are not separate little luxuries added onto life. They are part of the living conversation that keeps the body oriented, protected, and ready. Through them, the nervous system keeps refreshing its map moment by moment so the body can move through the world without losing itself inside it. The body's senses gather information from the world, but information is only useful if it can travel somewhere, be understood, and become a response. Behind every blink, step, breath, shiver, swallow, and startled little flinch is a communication system so dense and delicate that it makes even the busiest city look underconnected. This is the nervous system, the body's living wiring, and at its centre are the brain and spinal cord. Together, the brain and spinal cord form the central nervous system. The word central is important because this is where huge amounts of information are received, processed, compared, stored, and turned into action. The brain sits inside the skull, surrounded by bone like a soft, electrically active treasure in a very serious helmet. The spinal cord runs down through the vertebral column, protected by the stacked bones of the spine. From there, nerves branch outward into the rest of the body, carrying messages to and from muscles, skin, organs, glands, and blood vessels. The protection around the central nervous system is not casual. Brain tissue and spinal cord tissue are delicate, and once badly damaged, they can be difficult to repair. The skull protects the brain from impact. The vertebral column shields the spinal cord while still allowing the back to bend, twist, and support the body. Around the brain and spinal cord are three protective membranes called the meninges. These layers help cushion, support, and separate the central nervous system from surrounding tissues. There is also cerebrospinal fluid, a clear fluid that surrounds the brain and spinal cord. It cushions the nervous system, helps remove waste products, and provides a stable chemical environment. The brain is not simply resting dry inside the skull, which is probably for the best, as that would be a deeply poor choice. Instead, it floats slightly in this fluid, reducing its effective weight and softening some of the mechanical stress of movement. Another form of protection is the blood-brain barrier. This barrier is formed by tightly connected cells lining many of the brain's blood vessels. It helps control which substances can pass from the blood into the brain. The brain needs oxygen and nutrients, but it also needs protection from toxins, pathogens, and sudden chemical changes. The blood-brain barrier is not an impenetrable wall, but it is a careful filter, helping preserve the special environment that nervous tissue requires. The working stars of the nervous system are neurons. Neurons are signaling cells, able to carry information using both electrical and chemical activity. A typical neuron has branching structures called dendrites, which receive signals from other cells. It has a cell body, which contains the nucleus and much of the cell's machinery. It also has an axon, a long fibre that carries signals away from the cell body toward other neurons, muscles, or glands. Signals move along neurons as electrical changes across the cell membrane. When the signal reaches the end of an axon, it often crosses a tiny gap called a synapse. At the synapse, the neuron may release chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters cross the gap and bind to receptors on the next cell, helping pass the message onward. In this way, the nervous system is both electrical and chemical, like a whisper travelling through lightning and chemistry at the same time, which is more poetic than most household wiring can claim. Many axons are wrapped in myelin, a fatty insulating layer that helps signals travel faster and more efficiently. In the central nervous system, myelin is made by glial cells called oligodendrocytes. In the peripheral nervous system, outside the brain and spinal cord, myelin is made by Schwann cells. Myelin allows signals to move rapidly along nerve fibers, which matters because a message from the foot to the spinal cord, or from the brain to the hand, cannot afford to wander along like it is enjoying a leisurely countryside stroll. For a long time, neurons received most of the attention, but the nervous system also depends on glial cells. These are support cells, though the word support can make them sound less important than they are. Astrocytes help maintain the chemical environment around neurons, support the blood-brain barrier, help regulate neurotransmitters, and assist with energy supply. Oligodendrocytes produce myelin in the brain and spinal cord. Schwann cells produce myelin around nerves in the body and help support repair after some peripheral nerve injuries. Microglia act as immune-like cells inside the central nervous system, responding to injury, infection, and cellular debris. Together, neurons and glia create a living communication network. It is not just a set of cables, it is active tissue, constantly changing connections, adjusting sensitivity, strengthening useful pathways, pruning others, and responding to the body's needs. The nervous system learns, adapts, protects, and coordinates. It helps turn sensation into movement, internal changes into correction, and danger into action. One of the clearest examples of fast nervous control is the spinal reflex. A reflex is an automatic response to a stimulus. Some reflexes involve the brain, but many can be handled through the spinal cord before conscious awareness has fully caught up. The withdrawal reflex is a classic example. If a hand touches something painfully hot, sensory nerves carry the warning signal toward the spinal cord. Interneurons inside the spinal cord help activate motor neurons, which send signals back to muscles in the arm. The hand pulls away quickly, often before the person has fully registered the pain. This is not because the brain is uninvolved forever. The pain signal still travels upward, and awareness follows. But the first protective movement can begin before the thinking mind has finished reading the report. This is a useful arrangement, because if the body had to pause and reflect deeply before moving away from danger, hands, feet, and other vulnerable parts would be in for a rather difficult time. Nerves branch from the spinal cord and brain into the rest of the body. Some carry sensory information inward, reporting touch, temperature, pain, stretch, pressure, and position. Others carry motor, commands outward, telling skeletal muscles when to contract. Autonomic nerves control smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, glands, and blood vessel width. Through these pathways, the nervous system can influence digestion, sweating, pupil size, heart rate, airway width, bladder function, and many other processes that rarely require conscious supervision. The body, therefore, depends not only on organs doing their own jobs, but on communication between those organs. The heart must respond to changes in activity and blood pressure. The lungs must adjust breathing to carbon dioxide levels. Blood vessels must widen or narrow. Muscles must contract in the right sequence. Glands must release their substances at useful times. The gut must move food along. The skin must respond to heat, cold, injury, and touch. None of this coordination would be possible if messages moved too slowly, too vaguely, or not at all. This is why the skull, spine, and branching nerves are not merely anatomical structures. They are the protected pathways of survival. The central nervous system receives the body's reports, compares them with what is needed, and helps send instructions back out. Neurons carry signals with astonishing speed and precision. Glial cells keep the network stable, insulated, defended, nourished, and adaptable. Reflexes protect the body before thought can fully arrive. Nerves stretch from the center to the edges, making the body one connected whole rather than a collection of separate parts. A living body must breathe, pump blood, digest, heal, move, cool itself, warm itself, defend itself, and sense its surroundings. But just as importantly, it must coordinate. It must know what is happening in one place and adjust what happens somewhere else. The nervous system gives the body that power. It is the quiet conversation between center and edge, between thought and reflex, between skin and spine, between muscle and brain. And through that conversation, the body becomes not just alive in pieces, but alive together. Breathing feels so simple that it can almost disappear from attention. Air comes in, air goes out, and the body carries on. Yet inside the chest, this quiet rhythm is one of the most important exchanges in life. Every cell in the body needs a steady supply of oxygen to make energy efficiently, and every cell produces carbon dioxide as waste. If oxygen falls too low, cells struggle to keep their chemistry running. If carbon dioxide builds too high, it begins to change the acidity of the blood, disturbing the careful chemical balance that nerves, muscles, enzymes, and organs depend on. Oxygen matters because human cells use it during aerobic respiration, the process that allows mitochondria to release usable energy from nutrients such as glucose and fats. This energy is carried in a molecule called adenosine triphosphate, which powers muscle contraction, nerve signaling, protein building, repair, transport across cell membranes, and countless other small jobs that rarely get applause. Carbon dioxide, meanwhile, must be removed because it reacts with water in the body and affects blood acidity. The body is not simply trying to get air for dramatic effect. It is protecting the chemistry of life, breath by breath. Air usually enters through the nose or mouth. The nose warms, moistens, and filters air, while tiny hairs and mucus help trap particles. From there, air passes through the pharynx, the shared passage behind the nose and mouth, and then through the larynx where the vocal cords sit. This is also where breathing and speaking politely share the same equipment, which is efficient, though occasionally risky when someone tries to laugh and drink at the same time. The air then moves into the trachea, a firm tube supported by rings of cartilage. The trachea divides into two main bronchi, one leading toward each lung. Inside the lungs, the bronchi branch again and again into smaller bronchi, then into even finer bronchioles. This branching pattern is important because it spreads air deep into the lung tissue. The respiratory system is not built like one large empty bag. It is more like a living tree turned upside down, with airways branching into smaller and smaller passages until they reach the alveoli. The alveoli are tiny air sacs where the real exchange happens. There are hundreds of millions of them in the lungs, creating an enormous surface area within the chest. This is one of the great tricks of biology. Fold, branch, and repeat until a small space can do a very large job. Each alveolus is wrapped in a network of capillaries, the smallest blood vessels. The walls between air and blood are extremely thin, allowing gases to move across them by diffusion. Diffusion is the movement of particles from where they are more concentrated to where they are less concentrated. In the alveoli, oxygen is more concentrated in the freshly inhaled air than in the blood arriving from the body, so oxygen moves into the blood. Carbon dioxide is more concentrated in the returning blood than in the air inside the alveoli, so carbon dioxide moves out of the blood and into the lungs, ready to be exhaled. No tiny worker with a clipboard is pushing each molecule through. The movement comes from concentration differences and the thinness of the exchange surface. Once oxygen enters the blood, much of it attaches to hemoglobin inside red blood cells. Hemoglobin is an ion containing protein that can bind oxygen in the lungs and release it in tissues where oxygen levels are lower. This allows blood to carry far more oxygen than plasma could manage alone. carbon dioxide travels back to the lungs in several forms, including dissolved in plasma attached to hemoglobin, and mostly as bicarbonate in the blood. This system helps transport waste gas while also helping regulate acidity. The mechanical act of breathing depends mainly on the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles between the ribs. The diaphragm is a broad sheet of muscle beneath the lungs. When it contracts, it moves downward, increasing the space inside the chest. The intercostal muscles help lift and expand the rib cage. As the chest expands, pressure inside the lungs falls slightly and air flows inward. Inhalation is not air being pulled in by magic. It is air moving down a pressure gradient. When the diaphragm relaxes, it rises again, and the chest space becomes smaller. During quiet breathing, this elastic recoil helps push air out. During stronger breathing, such as exercise, coughing, or blowing out candles on a birthday cake that is becoming numerically rude, extra muscles can help force air out more powerfully. Exhalation removes carbon dioxide and prepares the lungs for the next intake of oxygen. The scientific understanding of breathing developed over centuries. Joseph Priestley identified oxygen in the 18th century, though he did not understand it in modern terms. Antoine Lavoisier helped explain oxygen's role in combustion and respiration, showing that breathing was tied to chemical exchange rather than vague life vapors. Modern respiratory physiology has since revealed the detailed mechanics of ventilation, diffusion, hemoglobin transport, carbon dioxide regulation, and brainstem control. Breathing also shows how no organ system keeps the body alive alone. The lungs provide the exchange surface, but the brainstem helps regulate rhythm. Nerves carry instructions. The diaphragm and intercostal muscles create pressure changes. Red blood cells and hemoglobin transport oxygen. Blood vessels carry gases to and from tissues. Cells use oxygen in metabolism and produce carbon dioxide as waste. The whole process is one continuous loop between air, blood, nerves, muscles, and cellular chemistry. So each breath is more than a gentle movement in the chest. It is a meeting point between the outside world and the inner body. The air around you becomes part of the blood for a while, and the waste from your cells leaves quietly on the next exhale. The exchange never truly stops, because the body's need for balance never stops. In every calm breath, the lungs are helping protect the invisible conditions that allow the heart to beat, the brain to think, the muscles to move, and the cells to keep their small fires burning. The lungs bring oxygen into reach, but oxygen is only useful if it can travel. It has to leave the chest and reach the brain, the muscles, the kidneys, the skin, the gut, the bones, and the quiet little cells at the edges of the toes that are also trying to have a decent day. That movement depends on the heart, a muscular pump that keeps blood flowing through two link circuits, one through the lungs and one through the rest of the body. The heart sits in the chest, slightly left of center, protected by the ribs and resting between the lungs. It is made mostly of cardiac muscle, a specialized tissue built to contract rhythmically, tirelessly, and with just enough stubbornness to keep going for an entire lifetime. It is not shaped like the neat symbol found on greetings cards, which is probably for the best, because a real heart has valves, vessels, chambers, and rather less interest in poetry. The heart has 4 chambers. The 2 upper chambers are called atria, and the 2 lower chambers are called ventricles. The right side of the heart receives blood returning from the body, blood that has delivered much of its oxygen and collected carbon dioxide from tissues. This blood enters the right atrium, moves into the right ventricle, and is then pumped through the pulmonary artery toward the lungs. In the lungs, carbon dioxide can leave the blood and oxygen can enter it. The left side of the heart receives this oxygen-rich blood from the lungs through the pulmonary veins. It enters the left atrium, moves into the left ventricle, and is then pumped through the aorta, the body's largest artery. From there, blood travels through branching arteries, smaller arterioles, tiny capillaries, and then back through venules and veins. The right side sends blood to the lungs, the left side sends blood to the body. Together they make one continuous circulation. The cardiac cycle is the repeating pattern of filling and pumping. During the filling phase, blood flows into the atria and then into the ventricles. The heart muscle is relaxed enough to receive blood, and the valves between the atria and ventricles are open. These valves are called the tricuspid valve on the right side and the mitral valve on the left side. When the ventricles contract, pressure rises inside them. These valves close, and blood is pushed outward through the pulmonary valve and the aortic valve. The valves matter because blood needs to move in one direction. Without valves, each contraction would waste energy pushing some blood backwards. Instead, the opening and closing of valves turn the heart into an efficient one-way pump. The familiar heartbeat sounds come largely from valves closing. It is the sound of pressure changing and doors shutting at just the right time, which is less romantic than a heart whispering secrets, but much more useful. The heart also has its own electrical timing system. The main natural pacemaker is the sinoatrial node, a small cluster of specialized cells in the right atrium. It generates electrical impulses that spread across the atria and encourage them to contract. The signal then reaches the atrioventricular node, where it pauses briefly. This pause gives the ventricles time to fill before they contract. From there, the impulse travels through the bundle of His, the bundle branches, and the Purkinje fibers, spreading through the ventricles so they squeeze in a coordinated way. This internal rhythm means the heart does not need the brain to command every beat. Even so, it does not work in isolation. The autonomic nervous system adjusts the heart according to the body's needs. Sympathetic signals can make the heart beat faster and with more force during exercise, stress, heat, or danger. Parasympathetic signals, especially through the vagus nerve, can slow the heart during rest. The heart generates its rhythm, but it also listens. It is independent, but not arrogant, which is a useful quality in an organ with such an important job. The idea that blood moves in a circuit was clearly described by the English physician William Harvey in the 17th century. Before Harvey, many ideas about blood were confused by older traditions. Harvey studied the heart, vessels, and one-way valves, and argued that blood circulates continuously around the body. This transformed physiology because it showed that the heart was not simply producing warmth or stirring fluids vaguely. It was driving a closed loop of movement, sending blood outward and receiving it back again. Blood pressure is part of this movement, but it is not just a number mentioned by doctors with cuffs and thoughtful eyebrows. Blood pressure is the force that moving blood exerts against vessel walls. It must be high enough to push blood through the body, especially up toward the brain and out through small vessels, but not so high that it damages arteries over time. The body therefore controls blood pressure carefully. Large arteries carry blood away from the heart under pressure. Arterioles, the smaller branches leading toward capillaries, can widen or narrow to change resistance. When arterioles narrow, pressure can rise and blood flow can be redirected. When they widen, pressure may fall and more blood can enter a region. This is how the body can send more blood to working muscles, warm skin, or active digestive organs when needed. Baroreceptors help monitor this system. These pressure sensors are found in places such as the carotid arteries in the neck and the aortic arch near the heart. When blood pressure changes, baroreceptors send signals to the brainstem. The body can then adjust heart rate, heart contraction, and blood vessel width. The kidneys also help regulate blood pressure more slowly by controlling salt and water balance, and by releasing signals that affect blood vessel tone and fluid volume. The heart, then, is not merely a pump beating away on its own. It is part of a larger conversation involving the lungs, brainstem, blood vessels, kidneys, hormones, and blood itself. Circulation turns the body into a connected place. Oxygen from the lungs is delivered to cells. Nutrients from digestion are carried to tissues. Hormones travel from glands to distant targets. Immune cells move through the bloodstream and can leave vessels where they are needed. Heat made in active tissues is redistributed. Waste products are carried toward the lungs, liver, and kidneys for removal or processing. Every heartbeat is a small act of distribution. It prevents the body from becoming a set of isolated neighborhoods, each hoping supplies will somehow wander in. The brain needs oxygen and glucose continuously. Muscles need fuel and waste removal. Skin needs blood flow for warmth and repair. The gut needs circulation to absorb nutrients. The kidneys need blood to filter. The lungs need blood to exchange gases. Even the heart muscle itself needs its own blood supply through the coronary arteries, because the pump is also living tissue. This is why the heart learns to listen. It beats on its own rhythm, but that rhythm is shaped by the needs of the whole body. It speeds when movement demands more oxygen. It slows when rest allows quiet conservation. It pushes blood through the lungs to refresh it, then through the body to share it. It works with pressure, valves, electricity, muscle, vessels, nerves, and kidneys to keep the inner world supplied. The body stays alive because nothing important is left standing alone. Breath fills the lungs, but the heart gives that breath a root. Food becomes nutrients, but circulation gives those nutrients reach. Hormones carry instructions, but blood gives them distance. Immune cells defend, but vessels give them roads. The heart is not the whole story of life, but it is the pulse that keeps the story connected, carrying the quiet necessities of survival from one place to another, beat after beat after beat. Blood looks like a simple red liquid, but it's far more like a travelling tissue. It moves, but it's alive. It carries cells, proteins, dissolved gases, salts, nutrients, hormones, waste products, heat, and chemical signals. It links the lungs to the muscles, the gut to the liver, the immune system to a cut finger, and the kidneys to nearly every corner of the body. If the heart is the pump, blood is the moving road system, delivery service, defense patrol, heating network, and emergency repair crew all at once. It is very busy, and yet, thankfully, it does not ask to be tipped. Blood is a connective tissue because it connects different parts of the body through transport. Its liquid portion is called plasma. Plasma is mostly water, but it also contains proteins, salts, nutrients, hormones, dissolved gases, and waste products. Albumin, one of the major plasma proteins, helps hold water inside the bloodstream. Other proteins help with clotting, immune defense, transport, and chemical balance. Floating in this plasma are red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets, each with a different role in keeping the body alive. Red blood cells are the most numerous cells in the blood, and their main job is to carry oxygen. They have a distinctive biconcave shape, meaning they are thinner in the middle and thicker around the edges. This shape gives them a large surface area for gas exchange and helps them bend through capillaries that can be extremely narrow. A red blood cell is flexible enough to squeeze through tiny vessels, deliver oxygen, collect some carbon dioxide, and keep moving without making a fuss about the working conditions. Mature human red blood cells also lack a nucleus. This may sound like a drawback because the nucleus contains genetic instructions. But for red blood cells, it is an advantage. Losing the nucleus creates more room for hemoglobin, the protein that carries oxygen. Hemoglobin contains iron, and each hemoglobin molecule can bind oxygen in the lungs, where oxygen levels are high, then release it in tissues where oxygen levels are lower. This allows blood to transport oxygen far more efficiently than plasma could manage on its own. The iron in hemoglobin is also part of the reason blood is red. When hemoglobin carries oxygen, it appears bright red. When it has released much of its oxygen, it becomes darker red, though still red rather than blue, despite what some diagrams might politely suggest for convenience. The colour is a visible clue to a deeper process. The body is constantly loading and unloading oxygen, matching supply to need in tissues that are working, resting, repairing, warming, or growing. Blood also carries white blood cells, which are central to immune defense. These cells are less numerous than red blood cells, but they are remarkably varied. Neutrophils are fast responders, especially important in fighting bacteria and moving quickly into damaged or infected tissue. Lymphocytes include B cells, T cells, and natural killer cells, which help coordinate targeted immune responses, produce antibodies, recognize infected cells, and remember certain threats. Monocytes can enter tissues and become macrophages, cells that engulf debris, microbes, and damaged material. Eosinophils are involved in responses to parasites and allergic reactions. Basophils help release chemical signals involved in inflammation and allergy. This sounds like a rather dramatic security department, and in a way, it is. White blood cells are constantly involved in deciding what belongs, what does not, what is damaged, and what needs attention. They travel in the blood, but they can also leave the bloodstream and enter tissues when chemical signals call them. A small cut, an infection, or inflammation can summon immune cells from the circulation into the area where they are needed. Blood therefore carries defense not as a static shield, but as a mobile response system. Platelets are another vital part of blood. They are not full cells in the same way as red and white blood cells, but small cell fragments produced from larger bone marrow cells called megakaryocytes. Their main role is clotting. When a blood vessel is damaged, platelets stick to the injured area, become activated, and help form a temporary plug. They also release signals that recruit more platelets and support the clotting process. Clotting involves a carefully controlled chain of protein reactions. One of the final results is the formation of fibrin, a strong protein mesh that helps stabilize the clot. The fibrin strands trap blood cells and reinforce the platelet plug, forming a more durable seal. This is essential because without clotting, even small injuries could become dangerous. A paper cut is annoying enough as it is. It does not need to become a full plumbing crisis. Yet clotting must be balanced. Too little clotting leads to excessive bleeding. Too much clotting or clotting in the wrong place can block blood vessels and cause serious harm. The body therefore has systems that promote clotting when vessels are injured, and systems that limit clotting once repair has begun. Blood must remain fluid enough to flow, but ready enough to seal a leak. It is a delicate compromise between movement and repair. Blood compatibility is another crucial part of medical survival. In the early 20th century, Karl Landsteiner discovered the ABO blood group system, a finding that transformed transfusion medicine. The ABO system is based on markers, called antigens, found on the surface of red blood cells. A person with type A blood has A antigens. Type B blood has B antigens. Type AB blood has both. Type O blood has neither A nor B antigens on the red cells. This matters because the immune system can react strongly to unfamiliar blood cell markers. If incompatible blood is transfused, antibodies in the recipient's plasma may attack the donated red blood cells, causing clumping and destruction of cells. That can be dangerous or even fatal. Understanding blood groups made transfusion much safer and turned blood from a risky mystery into a life-saving medical tool. Later discoveries, including the rhesus blood group system, added further detail to compatibility. Blood also helps regulate temperature. Warm blood moving from active muscles and deeper organs can carry heat toward the skin, where it may be released. When the body needs to conserve heat, blood flow near the skin can be reduced. Blood helps maintain acidity, salt balance, fluid balance, and the distribution of nutrients. It carries glucose, amino acids, fats, vitamins, minerals, hormones, immune signals, and metabolic waste. It delivers raw materials for repair and removes substances that cells no longer need. So blood is not merely something that fills the body. It is one of the main reasons the body can act as a unified living system. It carries oxygen from the lungs, nutrients from the gut, hormones from glands, immune cells from the marrow and lymphatic tissues, heat from one region to another, and waste products toward organs that can process or remove them. Every drop is part of a wider circulation of information, defense, balance, and supply. The body stays alive because its tissues are not left alone. They are reached, they are supplied, they are defended, they are cleaned. Blood makes distance inside the body less of a problem. It turns the heart's pumping into movement, the lungs breathing into delivery, digestion into nourishment, immunity into patrol, and repair into action. Quietly, continuously, and with every heartbeat, this moving tissue carries the conditions of life from one place to the next. The body is not sealed away from the world. It breathes air, eats food, touches surfaces, carries microbes on the skin, houses microbes in the gut, and constantly repairs tiny bits of wear and tear. Life depends on openness, but openness brings risk. Bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites, toxins, damaged cells, and abnormal cells all have to be recognized and handled. This is where the immune system becomes essential. It is not one organ or one kind of cell, but a layered defense network spread throughout the body, quietly asking a difficult question again and again: does this belong here? The first layer of defense begins before immune cells are called in. The skin is a physical barrier built from tightly packed cells and strengthened by keratin. It keeps much of the outside world outside, which is a useful arrangement for anyone not wishing to become a walk-in buffet for bacteria. The skin also has chemical defenses, including slightly acidic conditions and antimicrobial substances that make life harder for many microbes. Other surfaces use different defenses. Mucus traps particles and microbes in the nose, throat, airways, gut, and reproductive tract. In the airways, tiny hair-like structures called cilia move mucus upward, helping clear dust, pollen, and trapped organisms before they can settle too deeply. Tears wash the eyes and contain enzymes such as lysozyme, which can damage bacterial cell walls. Saliva helps clean the mouth and contains antimicrobial compounds. Stomach acid is harsh enough to kill many microbes that arrive with food, although a few hardy troublemakers do still attempt the journey, proving that biology has no shortage of optimism. The normal microbiome also helps defend the body. The skin, mouth, gut, and other surfaces are home to communities of bacteria, fungi, and other microbes. Many are harmless or helpful. They take up space, use available nutrients, influence local chemistry, and can make it harder for harmful organisms to gain a foothold. This does not mean every microbe is friendly, but it does mean the body is not simply trying to create perfect emptiness. Sometimes defense means maintaining the right community rather than removing everything. If barriers are crossed, innate immunity responds quickly. Innate immunity is the body's fast general defense system. It does not need to recognize a specific invader from a past encounter. Instead, it responds to broad signs of damage, infection, or danger. Macrophages are important innate immune cells that can engulf microbes, dead cells, and debris. Neutrophils are rapid responders that often arrive early at sites of infection, especially bacterial infection. Natural killer cells help detect and destroy some infected or abnormal cells, particularly cells that are not displaying the usual signals of health. Inflammation is one of innate immunity's main tools. When tissue is damaged or infected, chemical signals cause nearby blood vessels to widen and become more permeable. This allows immune cells and proteins to move from the blood into the affected tissue. The area may become red, warm, swollen, and painful. These symptoms can be unpleasant, but they are signs of activity, more blood flow, more immune access, and more repair signals. Inflammation is the body turning up the local response, although like any alarm system, it is much more helpful when it knows when to stop. Fever is another defense response. It is a regulated rise in body temperature, guided by the hypothalamus in response to immune signals. Fever can make conditions less comfortable for some pathogens and can support parts of immune activity. It is not simply the body losing control of heat. It is a controlled adjustment, though one that must stay within safe limits. The complement system also belongs to innate immunity. It is a group of proteins in the blood that can help mark microbes for destruction, attract immune cells, and in some cases directly damage invading organisms. Adaptive immunity is slower at first, but more specific. It is built around B cells, T cells, antibodies, and memory cells. B cells can develop into plasma cells that produce antibodies. Antibodies are proteins that bind to specific targets, such as parts of a virus or bacterium. They can block pathogens, mark them for destruction, or help other immune processes find them. T cells have several roles. Some help coordinate immune responses, some can kill infected cells, others help regulate the system so it does not become too reckless. The remarkable feature of adaptive immunity is memory. After exposure to certain pathogens, some B cells and T cells remain as memory cells. If the same threat appears again, the immune system can respond faster and more effectively. This is the principle that makes vaccines so powerful. A vaccine presents the immune system with a safe version, piece, or instruction related to a pathogen, so the body can learn without having to suffer the full disease. Edward Jenner's work with smallpox vaccination in the late 18th century helped open this field, and Louis Pasteur later expanded the scientific understanding of vaccination through work on diseases such as rabies and anthrax. But immunity must be balanced. Too little defense leaves the body vulnerable to infection. Too much defense can damage healthy tissue. Misdirected defense can lead to allergies, where harmless substances trigger excessive responses, or autoimmune disease, where the immune system attacks the body's own cells and tissues. Chronic inflammation can contribute to long-term tissue damage and is linked with many diseases. A good immune system is not one that attacks everything with maximum force. It is one that recognizes, responds, remembers, repairs, and then calms down when the job is done. This is why immunity is deeply connected to the rest of the body. It depends on blood to move cells and proteins, the lymphatic system to drain fluids and coordinate immune activity, the skin and gut to maintain barriers, the nervous and endocrine systems to influence inflammation and stress responses, and cellular repair systems to rebuild after damage. Energy and oxygen keep tissues alive, but recognition keeps them safe. The body must know what belongs, what is foreign, what is injured, what is infected, and what has become abnormal. The immune system is therefore not just a border guard standing at the edge. It is a whole network of watchfulness woven through the body. It patrols, samples, remembers, tolerates, attacks, cleans, and repairs. Most of the time, it does this quietly enough to be forgotten, and that quietness is part of its success. Staying alive is not only about being fueled and oxygenated, it is also about being recognized from within, defended without panic, and protected by a system that knows the difference between a passing visitor, a real threat, and the body it is trying to save. Food enters the body looking like bread, fruit, soup, rice, fish, vegetables, chocolate, or whatever small snack claimed it was only going to be one bite, and then mysteriously became several. But the body cannot use food in that form. A piece of food must be taken apart, softened, mixed, dissolved, broken down, absorbed, transported, stored, converted, and finally used by cells. Digestion is the long transformation of food into usable molecules. The main building blocks are simple in principle. Carbohydrates are broken down into sugars, especially glucose. Proteins are broken down into amino acids. Fats are broken down into fatty acids and related molecules. Vitamins, minerals, water, and salts are handled in their own ways. The body is not trying to keep a sandwich as a sandwich. It is trying to turn its ingredients into materials that can enter the bloodstream, pass into tissues, and support energy production, repair, growth, heat, movement, and all the quiet chemistry of staying alive. Digestion begins in the mouth. The teeth cut, crush, and grind food into smaller pieces, increasing its surface area so enzymes can work more effectively. The tongue moves food around and helps shape it into a soft mass for swallowing. Saliva moistens the food, making it easier to move, and contains an enzyme called amylase, which begins breaking down starch. The mouth is therefore not just the entrance to digestion, it is the first processing station, though admittedly one with a strong tendency to get distracted by biscuits. Once food is swallowed, it passes through the pharynx and into the esophagus. The esophagus is a muscular tube that moves food toward the stomach through peristalsis, a wave-like pattern of muscle contraction. This movement means food can continue travelling even if the body is not perfectly upright, although eating dinner while upside down is still not a lifestyle anyone needs to prove. The esophagus delivers food to the stomach through a ring of muscle that helps reduce backward flow. The stomach is a muscular chamber where food is churned, mixed, and exposed to strong chemical digestion. Its lining releases hydrochloric acid, which makes the stomach highly acidic. This acid helps unfold proteins, kills many microbes, and creates the right conditions for pepsin, an enzyme that begins breaking proteins into smaller fragments. The stomach turns food into a thick fluid called chyme, releasing it gradually into the small intestine. One of the stomach's small miracles is that it digests food without normally digesting itself. It manages this through a protective mucus layer, bicarbonate secretion, tight connections between surface cells, and constant renewal of the stomach lining. The acid is powerful, but it is not simply sloshing around unopposed. The stomach is built like a controlled chemical workshop, with strong tools and careful safety measures. When those protections fail or are disrupted, acid can contribute to damage, which shows how important the balance is. From the stomach, chyme enters the small intestine, the main site of digestion and absorption. Despite being called small, this part of the gut is long and highly folded. Its inner surface contains finger-like projections called villi, and the cells on those villi carry even tinier projections called microvilli. These folds create a vast surface area, allowing nutrients to be absorbed efficiently into blood and lymph. It is another example of the body solving a big problem by folding a surface into a surprisingly large hidden landscape. The small intestine receives help from nearby organs. The pancreas releases digestive enzymes that break down carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. It also releases bicarbonate, which helps neutralize stomach acid as chyme enters the intestine. The liver produces bile, a fluid that helps handle fats, and the gallbladder stores and concentrates bile before releasing it when needed. Bile does not digest fat in the same way an enzyme does. Instead, it breaks fat into smaller droplets, allowing enzymes to work more effectively. absorbed nutrients from the small intestine do not simply drift randomly through the body. Many travel first to the liver through the hepatic portal vein. The liver acts as a chemical processing center, sorting, storing, modifying, and regulating what has been absorbed. It can store glucose as glycogen, process amino acids, handle fats, manage many vitamins and minerals, and help protect the body from harmful substances. In this way, digestion flows naturally into metabolism, because getting nutrients into the body is only the beginning. The large intestine has a different role. By the time material reaches it, most major nutrient absorption has already happened. The large intestine absorbs water and salts, helping turn the remaining material into stool. It also houses a large part of the gut microbiome, the ecosystem of bacteria and other microbes that live in the digestive tract. These microbes can help break down certain fibers, produce some vitamins, influence immune signaling, and affect aspects of metabolism. The microbiome is important, but it should not be treated like a magical explanation for everything. It is a real biological community, complex and useful, not a tiny committee secretly controlling all human destiny from the colon. The remaining waste moves through the large intestine into the rectum, where it is stored before leaving through the anus. This final stage is not glamorous, but it is essential. Digestion is not only about taking in what the body needs, it is also about removing what cannot be used, keeping the internal environment from becoming overloaded with leftover material. The gut is therefore much more than a tube. It is a moving, sensing, secreting, absorbing, immune interacting system. It contains muscles that push food along, glands that release fluids and enzymes, nerves that coordinate movement, blood vessels that carry nutrients away, lymph vessels that transport absorbed fats, immune cells that watch the border between food and body, and microbial communities that share the space. Food does not become life simply by being eaten. It must be dismantled into molecules small enough to cross the gut lining. Those molecules must enter circulation, reach tissues, pass into cells, and become energy, structure, signals, or stored reserves. A meal becomes muscle contraction, body heat, immune defense, skin repair, brain activity, and the steady beating of the heart only after a long chain of transformations. So digestion is a quiet act of conversion. It takes the outside world and carefully turns part of it into the body itself. Every mouthful carries a little future chemistry within it: energy for movement, amino acids for repair, fats for membranes, minerals for nerves and bones, water for blood and cells. The gut receives, separates, absorbs, and passes onward, making sure that food does not merely visit the body, but becomes useful enough to help keep it alive. Once food has been broken down and absorbed, it does not simply drift through the body and hope for the best. The molecules entering the blood need to be sorted, stored, changed, released, filtered, and sometimes carefully neutralized. This is where the liver and pancreas become central to the chemistry of balance. They help make sure the body does not merely receive fuel, but manages it. The liver sits in the upper right side of the abdomen, just beneath the diaphragm. It is one of the body's great processing organs, involved in hundreds of chemical tasks. It stores nutrients, modifies substances, makes important proteins, produces bile, helps manage fats, supports blood clotting, and breaks down many chemicals that the body no longer needs. It is sometimes described as a detoxifying organ, though that word can be overused in rather dramatic ways. The liver is not a magical filter for suspicious wellness potions. It is a real biological chemistry center, constantly handling substances that arrive from digestion, metabolism, medication, hormones, and normal cellular activity. A key reason the liver is so important after digestion is the hepatic portal vein. Most nutrient-rich blood leaving the intestines does not go straight into general circulation. It travels first through the hepatic portal vein to the liver. This means the liver gets an early look at what has been absorbed from the gut. It can store some nutrients, process others, and reduce the concentration of certain harmful substances before they circulate more widely. In that sense, the liver acts like a careful checkpoint after digestion. Glucose, amino acids, vitamins, minerals, fats, and other absorbed substances arrive in a mixed chemical stream. The liver helps decide what should be stored, what should be released, what should be transformed, and what should be prepared for removal. It can store glucose as glycogen, a branching storage form of carbohydrate. It can process amino acids and help make plasma proteins, including albumin and several clotting factors. It can also produce bile, which flows into the digestive system to help handle fats. Bile is one of the liver's quieter contributions. It contains bile salts that help break large fat droplets into smaller ones, allowing digestive enzymes to work more effectively. The liver produces bile, and the gallbladder stores and concentrates it between meals. When fatty food enters the small intestine, bile can be released to help digestion continue. This is another example of the body's careful timing. Helpful substances are not merely made, they are delivered when they are useful. Near the liver's story is the pancreas, another organ with a double life. Part of the pancreas works as a digestive organ. It releases pancreatic enzymes into the small intestine, where they help break down carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. It also releases bicarbonate, which helps neutralize the acidic mixture arriving from the stomach. Without this alkaline fluid, the small intestine would have a much harsher chemical environment to deal with. But the pancreas is also an endocrine organ, meaning it releases hormones into the blood. Its hormone-producing regions, called the islets of Langerhans, include cells that release insulin and glucagon. These two hormones are central to blood sugar regulation, one of the clearest examples of homeostasis in the body. After a meal, carbohydrates are digested into sugars, including glucose, and blood glucose rises. In response, the pancreas releases insulin. Insulin helps many cells take in glucose from the blood. It also encourages the liver and muscles to store glucose as glycogen and supports storage of excess energy in adipose tissue. The point is not to remove glucose because glucose is bad. Glucose is a useful fuel. The point is to keep its level within a workable range so cells have access to energy without the blood becoming chemically unbalanced. Between meals or during longer periods without food, blood glucose begins to fall. The pancreas then releases glucagon. Glucagon signals the liver to break down glycogen and release glucose back into the bloodstream. It also supports the production of glucose from other molecules when needed. In this way, insulin and glucagon act like opposing but cooperative instructions. One helps store and use glucose when it is plentiful. The other helps release glucose when supply is lower. The liver is central to this balance because it can store glycogen and release glucose into the blood. Muscles also store glycogen, but mainly for their own use. Adipose tissue stores energy in the form of fat and responds to hormonal signals about energy storage and release. Together, the pancreas, liver, muscle, and adipose tissue help smooth out the unevenness of eating. Meals arrive in episodes, but cells need energy all the time. The body solves this by storing fuel after plenty and releasing fuel during gaps. The importance of insulin became especially clear through the work of Frederick Banting, Charles Best, John MacLeod, and James Collett in the early 20th century. Their work helped make insulin available as a treatment for diabetes, transforming a once often fatal condition into something that could be managed. The discovery showed just how vital blood sugar control is. Cells need reliable energy, and the body needs a way to keep that energy supply steady without letting glucose rise or fall too far. The liver also helps manage many substances beyond glucose. It breaks down old hormones, processes alcohol and some medicines, converts ammonia, a toxic product of protein metabolism, into urea for removal by the kidneys, and helps regulate cholesterol and other fats. It produces clotting factors that help the blood seal injuries. It stores certain vitamins and minerals, including vitamin A, vitamin B12, iron, and copper. It is less like a simple filter and more like a chemical city, with factories, warehouses, recycling centres, inspection points, and a very strict policy about not letting everything into circulation unchecked. Survival depends not only on obtaining fuel, but on managing fuel wisely. The body must store when supplies are abundant, release when supplies are scarce, filter what may be harmful, modify what can be useful, and distribute resources at the right time. Digestion opens the door. The liver and pancreas decide how much of what came through that door should be used now, saved for later, changed into something safer, or prepared for removal. This is the chemistry of balance. A meal becomes more than a moment of eating. It becomes glucose held in range, fats handled carefully, proteins turned into building materials, toxins reduced, bile prepared, enzymes released, and hormones adjusted. The liver and pancreas do not simply help with digestion. They help turn irregular supplies from the outside world into a steady inner environment, giving the body one of its most important forms of calm, chemical stability. The body is constantly taking things in: air, water, food, salts, minerals, medicines, and countless small molecules enter, move, change, and become part of the inner chemical landscape. But staying alive is not only about receiving. It is also about choosing what to keep, what to release, what to balance, and what to remove before it causes trouble. This is where the kidneys become essential. They are filtering organs, but that description is only the beginning. They are also regulators of water, salts, waste products, blood pressure, acid-base balance, red blood cell production, and parts of vitamin D activation. The kidneys sit toward the back of the abdomen, one on each side of the spine, shaped rather like beans that somehow got promoted to senior management. Blood flows into them constantly through the renal arteries, carrying water, salts, nutrients, waste products, and many dissolved substances. The kidneys examine this blood, remove what the body does not need, return what it does need, and produce urine from the leftovers. It sounds simple until you remember that they are doing this while keeping the chemistry of the blood stable enough for the brain, heart, muscles, and cells to keep working. The microscopic working unit of the kidney is the nephron. Each kidney contains roughly around 1 million nephrons, though the number varies from person to person. A nephron begins with a tiny filtering structure called the glomerulus, a knot of small blood vessels where pressure pushes water and dissolved substances out of the blood and into the beginning of the kidney tubule. This first step is called filtration. Blood cells and large proteins usually stay in the bloodstream while water, salts, glucose, urea, and other small molecules enter the filtered fluid. That filtered fluid then travels through the tubule, including the proximal tubule, the loop of Henle, the distal tubule, and the collecting duct. As it moves, the kidney performs 2 more important processes: reabsorption and secretion. Reabsorption means taking useful substances from the filtered fluid and returning them to the blood. Glucose, many salts, much of the water, and other valuable molecules are reclaimed. Secretion means moving certain substances from the blood into the tubule for removal. This helps eliminate extra acids, some drugs, and waste products. The loop of Henle is especially important for controlling water. It helps create a concentration gradient in the kidney tissue, which allows the body to produce urine that is either dilute or concentrated depending on need. If the body needs to conserve water, the kidneys can reclaim more of it, producing darker, more concentrated urine. If there is more water than the body needs, the kidneys can allow more water to leave, producing paler, more diluted urine. This is one of the great quiet balancing acts of the body. Drink plenty of water and the kidneys adjust. Spend time sweating and they adjust again. They do not complain, though they would probably appreciate less guesswork from people who treat hydration like a competitive sport. This water balance is controlled partly by hormones. Antidiuretic hormone, released from the posterior pituitary gland, tells the kidneys to conserve more water when the body's becoming too concentrated or dehydrated. When antidiuretic hormone levels are higher, collecting ducts become more water permeable and more water returns to the blood. When levels are lower, more water stays in the urine. Through this system, the body can protect blood volume, blood concentration, and cellular hydration. The kidneys also regulate electrolytes. Electrolytes are charged particles dissolved in body fluids, including sodium, potassium, calcium, and chloride. These ions are not minor details. Sodium helps control fluid balance and nerve signaling. Potassium is essential for nerve impulses, muscle contraction, and heart rhythm. Calcium supports muscle contraction, nerve communication, bone structure, and blood clotting. Chloride helps with fluid balance and acid-base regulation. Cells depend on controlled ion levels because electrical signals in nerves and muscles arise from ions moving across membranes. If potassium becomes too high or too low, the rhythm of the heart can be disturbed. If sodium shifts too far, water balance and brain function can be affected. If calcium is poorly regulated, muscles, nerves, bones, and clotting can suffer. The kidneys help prevent these levels from drifting too far by adjusting how much is reabsorbed and how much is excreted. In other words, they are not just making urine, they are tuning the electrical and chemical conditions that allow the body to function. Blood pressure is also deeply tied to kidney function. One major system involved is the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. When blood pressure or blood flow through the kidneys falls, specialized kidney cells release renin. Renin helps begin a chain of reactions that produces angiotensin. Angiotensin can narrow blood vessels, which helps raise blood pressure. It also encourages the release of aldosterone from the adrenal glands, which sit above the kidneys. Aldosterone tells the kidneys to retain more sodium, and water tends to follow sodium. This increases blood volume and supports blood pressure. This system is powerful because blood pressure depends not only on how strongly the heart pumps, but also on how much fluid is in the bloodstream and how narrow or wide the vessels are. The kidneys help control both the volume of blood and the salt balance that influences it. They work slowly compared with the nerve reflex, but their long-term influence is enormous. The kidneys also help control acid-base balance. The body's enzymes and cells need blood acidity to remain within a narrow range. The kidneys can remove extra acid, conserve bicarbonate, and help stabilize blood chemistry over time. They also produce erythropoietin, a hormone that tells the bone marrow to make more red blood cells when oxygen delivery needs support. And they help activate vitamin D, which is important for calcium balance and bone health. So the kidneys are not simply waste pipes. They are careful biological editors. They filter the blood, reclaim useful material, remove waste, adjust water, balance salts, support pressure, influence red blood cell production, and help maintain the chemical conditions in which cells can live. The body survives because it can take in what it needs, but also because it can let go of what it does not. Without that quiet filtering and balancing, the inner environment would drift, thicken, dilute, acidify, overload, or dry out. The kidneys keep the bloodstream livable, one microscopic nephron at a time. Not every message in the body travels as a fast electrical signal. Some instructions move more slowly, drifting through the bloodstream as chemical messengers. These messengers are hormones, and together they form the endocrine system. Where nerves are quick and precise, hormones are often slower and more widespread. They can influence growth, appetite, thirst, stress, temperature, sleep, reproduction, blood sugar, salt balance, metabolism, bone strength, and the long rhythm of development and repair. A nerve signal is rather like a direct phone call. A hormone is more like a carefully addressed letter released into a busy river. It travels through the blood, passes many tissues, and only affects cells that have the right receptors to read it. This is one of the body's clever forms of coordination. A hormone can circulate widely, but its message is not understood everywhere. Cells without the matching receptor simply let it pass by. Like someone ignoring a flyer for a gym they have absolutely no intention of joining. The endocrine system includes glands and hormone-producing tissues throughout the body. The hypothalamus and pituitary glands sit near the base of the brain. The thyroid gland rests in the neck. The adrenal glands sit above the kidneys. The pancreas helps regulate blood sugar. The ovaries and testes produce sex hormones. Other tissues, including fat tissue, the gut, kidneys, heart, and even bone, also release chemical signals that influence the rest of the body. The endocrine system is not one tidy little office. It is a distributed communication network. One of its major control centers is the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is a small region of the brain, but it has enormous influence over survival. It monitors internal conditions and links the nervous system to the endocrine system. It helps regulate hunger, thirst, body temperature, sleep rhythms, stress responses, and hormone release. Just below it sits the pituitary gland, sometimes called the master gland, though that nickname can be misleading. The pituitary is powerful, but it is also strongly guided by the hypothalamus. Together they form the hypothalamic-pituitary axis. This axis is not a physical pole running through the body, but a functional relationship between brain signals and hormone release. The hypothalamus sends releasing or inhibiting hormones to the pituitary. The pituitary then releases hormones that act on other glands and tissues. Through this system, brain activity can influence growth, stress, reproduction, water balance, thyroid function, and metabolism. Thought, light exposure, sleep, stress, temperature, and internal chemistry can all become part of hormonal regulation. The pituitary releases several important hormones. Growth hormone helps support growth in childhood and contributes to tissue maintenance, metabolism, muscle, bone, and repair throughout life. Antidiuretic hormone, released from the posterior pituitary, helps the kidneys conserve water. Oxytocin plays roles in childbirth, milk release, and social bonding. Other pituitary hormones regulate the thyroid gland, adrenal glands, ovaries, and testes. In this way, a small structure beneath the brain can influence organs scattered across the body. The thyroid gland is one of the clearest examples of whole-body hormonal influence. It produces thyroid hormones, mainly thyroxine and triiodothyronine, which help regulate metabolic rate. Metabolic rate means how quickly the body's cells use energy and carry out chemical work. Thyroid hormones influence heat production, heart rate, digestion, growth, brain development, and energy use. They do not act like a simple on switch. They adjust the pace of many tissues at once. When thyroid activity is too low, the body's pace can slow. A person may feel cold, tired, sluggish, constipated, or mentally foggy, and heart rate may fall. When thyroid activity is too high, the body can feel as though the internal thermostat and engine have both been turned up. Heat intolerance, weight loss, fast heartbeat, shakiness, anxiety, and increased sweating can appear. These examples show why hormones must be held in balance. They do not merely influence one isolated organ. They can change the general tempo of the body. The adrenal glands also show how hormones support survival. Each adrenal gland has an outer cortex and an inner medulla. The adrenal medulla releases adrenaline, also called epinephrine, during immediate stress. Adrenaline helps raise heart rate, widen airways, increase blood flow to muscles, and mobilize stored fuel. It is part of the body's fast alarm response, closely linked with the sympathetic nervous system. It is useful if action is needed, and slightly less useful if the threat is only an email with the words "just checking in." The adrenal cortex produces cortisol and aldosterone. Cortisol helps the body adapt to longer-lasting stress. It affects blood sugar, metabolism, inflammation, immune activity, and energy availability. Cortisol is not simply a bad stress chemical. It is essential for life, but like many powerful tools, it needs proper timing and regulation. Too little cortisol can be dangerous. Too much over long periods can disturb metabolism, immunity, sleep, blood pressure, and tissue repair. Aldosterone helps regulate salt and water balance. It acts mainly on the kidneys, encouraging them to retain sodium and release potassium. Because water tends to follow sodium, aldosterone helps influence blood volume and blood pressure. It is part of the broader renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, which helps the body respond when blood pressure, blood volume, or salt balance needs correction. Once again, hormones do not work alone. They work with kidneys, blood vessels, nerves, and the heart. Sex hormones also have broad survival-related roles beyond reproduction itself. Estrogens, progesterone, and testosterone influence development, fertility, bone strength, muscle, fat distribution, red blood cell production, skin, blood vessels, brain function, and tissue maintenance. They help shape the body across puberty, adulthood, pregnancy, aging, and reproductive cycles. Their levels change over time, and those changes can influence many organs at once. Growth hormone deserves a similar broad view. In childhood and adolescence, it supports growth in height and body size, working closely with insulin like growth factor 1. In adults, it continues to influence muscle, bone, fat metabolism, and tissue repair. The body is not finished when it stops growing taller. It still needs to maintain itself, replace damaged structures, remodel tissues, and distribute energy in ways that support daily survival. Hormones can also be controlled by feedback loops. If a hormone level rises high enough, it can signal back to reduce further release. Thyroid hormones, for example, feed back to the hypothalamus and pituitary to help regulate thyroid-stimulating hormone. Cortisol feeds back on the hypothalamus and pituitary as well. This is homeostasis again, but in chemical form. The body sends a message, checks the result, and adjusts the message. The nervous system and endocrine system are deeply connected. Nerves can send rapid signals in fractions of a second. Hormones can shape the body over minutes, hours, days, months, or years. A sudden fright may trigger fast nerve signals and adrenaline release. A longer period of stress may involve cortisol. A meal may involve insulin and gut hormones. Dehydration may involve antidiuretic hormone and aldosterone. Growth, puberty, pregnancy, sleep rhythms, and aging all involve hormonal timing. The body stays alive because it can respond quickly when it must, and slowly when change needs to last. Electrical signals move like sparks through nerves. Hormones move like instructions carried through blood. Together they allow organs to behave less like separate workers and more like an organized community. The heart, kidneys, liver, skin, brain, muscles, bones, and reproductive organs all receive chemical messages that help them match the body's changing needs. In this slower language of hormones, the body keeps adjusting its pace, its stores, its pressure, its growth, and its repair, quietly shaping life from the inside. The body is not hidden safely inside a sealed container. It lives in direct contact with the world. Air moves across it. Sunlight reaches it. Clothing rubs against it. Water touches it. Microbes land on it. Heat leaves through it. Cold presses against it. Every moment the body has to remain open enough to sense the environment, yet protected enough to keep its inner chemistry from spilling, drying, overheating, freezing, or becoming overrun. The skin is where that careful boundary is drawn. Skin is the body's largest organ, and it is much more than a covering. It protects against dehydration by keeping water inside. It helps block infection by forming a physical and chemical barrier. It reduces damage from ultraviolet radiation through pigment and repair systems. It shields deeper tissues from friction, pressure, and minor injury. It helps detect touch, pain, warmth, and cold. It helps regulate temperature. It also provides a living surface where immune cells, nerves, blood vessels, sweat glands, hair follicles, and microbial communities all quietly share the border between inside and outside. The outermost layer of the skin is the epidermis. This layer is mostly made of keratinocytes, cells that produce keratin, a tough structural protein that helps strengthen the skin's surface. As keratinocytes move upward through the epidermis, they become flatter and more protective, eventually forming the outer layer that is constantly shed and replaced. This renewal is one reason the skin can take so much daily wear without simply giving up and requesting a quieter career. Within the epidermis are melanocytes, cells that produce melanin. Melanin is a pigment that helps absorb ultraviolet radiation from sunlight and reduce damage to deoxyribonucleic acid inside skin cells. Skin color is influenced by the amount and type of melanin produced, as well as how it is distributed. Melanin does not make the skin invincible, but it is one important part of the body's defense against solar radiation. Beneath the epidermis lies the dermis. This layer contains collagen and elastin, proteins that give skin strength, structure, and flexibility. The dermis also contains blood vessels, nerves, sweat glands, sebaceous glands, and hair follicles. Blood vessels bring oxygen and nutrients to skin cells, carry away waste, and help control heat loss. Nerves detect pressure, vibration, pain, warmth, and cold. Sweat glands release fluid onto the surface. Hair follicles produce hair, and their associated glands release oils that help condition the skin. Below the dermis is the subcutaneous tissue, which contains fat and connective tissue. This layer cushions the body, helps store energy, and provides insulation. It also helps connect the skin to the structures beneath it while still allowing some movement. Together, the epidermis, dermis, and subcutaneous tissue form a living barrier that is tough enough to protect, flexible enough to move, and sensitive enough to report what is happening at the surface. One of the skin's most important survival roles is temperature regulation. Human cells work best within a narrow temperature range. If the body becomes too hot, proteins and enzymes can be disrupted. If it becomes too cold, chemical reactions slow, nerve signals and muscle function suffer, and vital organs can fail. The body therefore treats temperature as a controlled variable, not casual preference. The hypothalamus, a small control region in the brain, plays a central role in monitoring and adjusting body temperature. It receives information from temperature sensors in the body and helps coordinate responses. When the body becomes too warm, blood vessels near the skin widen. This process is called vasodilation. More warm blood flows close to the surface, allowing heat to move out into the environment. Sweat glands also release sweat onto the skin. As sweat evaporates, it carries heat away. Evaporation is powerful because changing liquid water into vapor takes energy, and that energy comes partly from heat at the skin surface. When the body becomes too cold, the opposite response can occur. Blood vessels near the skin narrow in a process called vasoconstriction. This reduces blood flow near the surface, helping preserve heat deeper inside the body. Muscles may begin shivering, producing heat through rapid contractions. The body may also encourage behavior that protects warmth, such as seeking shelter, curling up, adding clothing, or quietly deciding that going outside was a mistake. Behavior matters because physiology does not do everything alone. Sweating helps in heat, but drinking water and finding shade help too. Shivering helps in cold, but clothing, movement and shelter can make the difference between mild discomfort and real danger. The skin, blood vessels, muscles, brain and behavior all work together to keep internal temperature stable. Fever is a special case. It is not simply the body overheating by accident. Fever is a regulated rise in body temperature, often linked to immune signaling. During infection or inflammation, immune cells can release chemical signals that lead to the production of pyrogens. These signals influence the hypothalamus, causing it to raise the body's temperature set point. The body may then respond as if it is cold, producing chills and shivering even while temperature is rising. Fever can support immune defense in several ways, and some pathogens do less well at higher temperatures. But fever is also a demand on the body. It increases energy use, fluid needs, and stress on tissues. Like inflammation, it can be useful when controlled and harmful when excessive. The key idea is balance. The body raises temperature for a reason, but that response must remain within safe limits. Skin also has to repair itself when the border is broken. Wound healing begins quickly after injury. Blood vessels constrict briefly, and platelets help form a clot. Fibrin creates a mesh that stabilizes the wound and reduces blood loss. Inflammation follows, bringing immune cells that clear debris and help protect against infection. Then tissue growth begins. New cells move into the area, small blood vessels form, and fibroblasts produce collagen to rebuild strength. Over time, collagen is remodeled. The wound becomes stronger. The repaired skin may not be identical to the original tissue. A scar is the visible sign of repair, a patch where the body closed the border as best it could. Scar tissue may lack some of the original structures, such as hair follicles or sweat glands, but it allows the surface to seal. In survival terms, a scar is not a failure. It is evidence that the body chose closure over perfection, which is usually the sensible option when the outside world is trying to get in. The skin also works closely with the immune system. Immune cells in the skin watch for invading organisms and respond to injury. The normal skin microbiome helps occupy space and influence local defense. Sweat, oils, acidity, and the constant shedding of outer cells all make the surface a more difficult place for harmful microbes to settle. The skin is not a passive wall. It is a guarded, responsive, self-renewing frontier. Staying alive means maintaining a protected internal environment while constantly touching the outside world. The skin makes that possible. It keeps water in, helps keep pathogens out, senses danger, repairs damage, helps control temperature, and allows the body to meet the world without dissolving into it. Beneath its ordinary familiarity is a living boundary, quietly renewing itself, cooling and warming, warning and healing, holding the inner world together one cell layer at a time. The skeleton is easy to imagine as a dry frame, a silent set of white struts holding the body upright. But in a living person, bone is not dry, still, or lifeless. It is active tissue. It grows, repairs, stores minerals, responds to stress, produces blood cells, protects organs, and changes shape slowly over time. The skeleton is not furniture inside the body. It is a living organ system, quietly carrying weight, absorbing force, and giving muscles something firm to pull against. The most obvious role of the skeleton is support. Without bones, the body would not stand, sit upright, walk, lift, reach, chew, breathe properly, or hold its organs in anything like their usual arrangement. Bones give the body shape. They form levers for movement and protective cases around delicate tissues. The skull protects the brain. The vertebral column protects the spinal cord. The ribs protect the heart and lungs while still moving enough to allow breathing. The pelvis supports the weight of the upper body and protects organs in the lower abdomen. The bones of the arms, legs, hands, and feet allow grasping, balance, walking, running, climbing, and all the small daily movements that make survival practical. Bone is strong, but it is not simply solid all the way through. Compact bone forms the dense outer layer, giving bone strength and resistance to bending. Spongy bone lies inside many bones, especially near the ends. It has a lighter, honeycomb-like structure that reduces weight while still handling force. This is one of the skeleton's clever compromises. A body needs bones strong enough to bear loads, but not so heavy that walking across a room feels like carrying a stone monument around. Bone tissue contains collagen and minerals. Collagen gives bone flexibility and resistance to cracking. Calcium phosphate gives bone hardness and compressive strength. Together, they create a material that is both tough and slightly forgiving. Too little mineral, and bone becomes weak. Too little collagen, and bone becomes brittle. The strength of the skeleton comes from balance, not from one ingredient doing everything alone. Inside many bones is bone marrow. Red bone marrow produces blood cells through a process called hematopoiesis. Red blood cells, many white blood cells, and platelets all begin from stem cells in the marrow. This means the skeleton is tied directly to oxygen transport, immunity, and clotting. Bones are not merely protecting the blood system from the outside, they are helping manufacture it from within. Bone is also constantly remodeled by specialized cells. Osteoblasts build new bone. Osteoclasts break down old or stressed bone. Osteocytes, mature bone cells embedded in the tissue, help sense mechanical strain and maintain bone. This remodeling allows bones to adapt to use. Areas under repeated load can become stronger. Areas that are not used can lose density over time. The skeleton is listening to gravity, movement, impact, rest, nutrition, hormones, and age, even if it responds very slowly and without dramatic announcements. Joints are where bones meet, and they make movement possible. Some joints are built mainly for stability, others are built for mobility. The skull has joints that are mostly fixed, which is reassuring, because a highly flexible skull would be an extremely poor design choice. The spine has many small joints that together allow bending, twisting, and shock absorption, while still protecting the spinal cord. The hip is strong and weight-bearing, built for stability and powerful movement. The shoulder is highly mobile, allowing the arm to reach in many directions, but that freedom comes with less stability than the hip. The knee is a hinge-like joint that handles major forces during walking, running, standing, and climbing. It depends on bones, cartilage, ligaments, tendons, muscles, and fluid-filled joint spaces working together. Cartilage covers the ends of bones in many joints, creating a smooth surface that reduces friction and helps absorb force. Synovial fluid lubricates the joint, allowing movement to remain smooth. Ligaments connect bone to bone and help stabilize joints. Tendons connect muscle to bone, carrying the force of muscle contraction into movement. The hands and feet show how specialized the skeleton can become. The hand contains many small bones and joints that allow gripping, pinching, writing, tool use, and delicate manipulation. The feet contain arches and many bones that help absorb impact, distribute weight, and maintain balance. Every step depends on the foot acting as both a flexible shock absorber and a firm platform. That is a demanding job for something that spends much of its time being blamed for uncomfortable shoes. Bones also repair themselves after injury. When a fracture occurs, bleeding at the site forms a clot. Inflammatory cells arrive and begin clearing damaged tissue. A soft callus forms, creating an early bridge between broken ends. Over time, this callus becomes more mineralized and harder. Osteoblasts lay down new bone, and later remodeling reshapes the repair so it better matches the forces placed upon it. Modern orthopedic science supports this natural process with splints, casts, surgery, plates, screws, rehabilitation, and careful alignment when needed. The body does the biological repair, but medicine can help create the conditions for that repair to succeed. Bone remodeling also helps regulate minerals. Calcium is not only useful for bones, it is essential for muscle contraction, nerve signaling, blood clotting, and many cellular processes. The skeleton stores most of the body's calcium and phosphate, releasing or storing minerals under hormonal control when needed. Parathyroid hormone, vitamin D, and calcitonin all help influence this balance. The bones therefore act partly as a mineral reservoir, helping protect blood chemistry as well as body shape. The skeleton is connected to nearly every survival system. It protects the brain, spinal cord, heart, and lungs. It gives muscles firm anchors for movement. It produces blood cells. It stores minerals. It absorbs impact. It allows breathing through the movement of the ribs. It helps the body stand against gravity, reach for food, escape danger, hold tools, and rest in stable posture. So the frame of the body is not passive scaffolding. It is alive, responsive, vascular, cellular, and constantly maintained. The skeleton carries the body through the world while quietly rebuilding itself from the inside. It is strong enough to support, light enough to move, rigid enough to protect, and living enough to heal. Beneath every step, stretch, breath, and heartbeat, the bones are doing what living structures do best, holding firm, adjusting slowly, and making movement possible without ever asking for much attention. Muscles are often imagined as the body's engines for obvious movement. Walking, lifting, running, waving, stretching, or carrying shopping bags that somehow become heavier the closer they get to the front door. But muscle does far more than move the limbs. Muscles keep posture steady, help draw air into the lungs, support circulation, move food through the gut, control the size of blood vessels, produce heat, shape facial expression, help swallow, protect joints, and allow the body to interact with the world. They are active tissues of survival. There are three main types of muscle in the body. Skeletal muscle is the type most people think of first. It attaches to bones through tendons and produces voluntary movement, although much of its activity is more automatic than it feels. Standing, walking, adjusting balance, breathing, and holding the head upright all involve skeletal muscle. It is called voluntary because conscious control can guide it, but the nervous system is constantly making small adjustments in the background. Smooth muscle is found in the walls of organs and tubes. It moves food through the digestive tract, changes the width of blood vessels, helps control airways, moves urine through the urinary tract, and plays important roles in reproductive organs. Smooth muscle usually works without conscious control. Nobody has to politely remind the intestines to keep moving breakfast along, which is probably for the best because the day already contains enough administrative tasks. Cardiac muscle is found in the heart. It has its own specialized rhythm and is built for continuous coordinated contraction. Like skeletal muscle, it has organized contractile fibers. Like smooth muscle, it works without conscious command. Its job is unique: to squeeze blood through the lungs and body again and again, adjusting to rest, exercise, stress, temperature, sleep, and all the changing needs of living tissue. At the microscopic level, muscle contraction depends on proteins called actin and myosin. These proteins slide past one another inside muscle fibers, shortening the muscle and generating force. Calcium plays a key role by allowing the contractile machinery to engage. In skeletal muscle, a nerve signal arrives at the neuromuscular junction, the meeting point between a motor neuron and a muscle fiber. The motor neuron releases a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine, which helps trigger an electrical change in the muscle cell. That signal leads to calcium release inside the fiber, and calcium allows actin and myosin to interact. A motor neuron and the muscle fibers it controls are called a motor unit. Some motor units control many fibers and are useful for powerful movements. Others control only a few fibers, allowing fine control, as in the fingers or eyes. This is one reason the body can do both heavy lifting and delicate movement. The same general principle of nerve-controlled contraction can help pull a suitcase, blink gently, or rescue a phone before it falls face down onto the floor in what always feels like slow motion. Muscles also make posture possible. Standing still is not truly still. The body is constantly correcting itself. Muscles around the ankles, knees, hips, spine, neck, and shoulders make tiny adjustments to keep the center of mass balanced over the feet. Joints provide movement and flexibility. Proprioception tells the nervous system where the body's parts are. The vestibular system in the inner ear senses head movement and gravity. The cerebellum helps refine movement and balance. Vision adds another stream of information about position in space. Without these constant corrections, the body would not stand like a calm statue. It would collapse more like badly stacked furniture, possibly with the same level of dignity. Balance is active. Even sitting upright requires muscles in the trunk and neck. Holding the jaw steady, keeping the eyes aligned, breathing smoothly, and adjusting the spine all involve ongoing muscular work. Much of this happens beneath awareness, which is why ordinary posture feels effortless until fatigue, illness, injury, or sleepiness begins to reveal the effort. Muscle also supports breathing. The diaphragm is a major skeletal muscle beneath the lungs. When it contracts, it moves downward and helps draw air into the chest. Intercostal muscles between the ribs help expand and stabilize the rib cage. During exercise or distress, additional muscles in the neck, chest, and abdomen can help breathing become deeper or more forceful. Every calm breath depends on muscle work, even when the movement is gentle enough to be barely noticed. Muscle needs energy to function. Its immediate energy comes from adenosine triphosphate, the molecule cells used to power many processes. Muscles store a small amount of readily available chemical energy, including creatine phosphate, and they use glucose and fatty acids as fuels. During low-intensity activity, muscles can rely heavily on oxygen using aerobic metabolism. During intense activity, energy demand can rise faster than oxygen-based systems can fully supply it, and muscles increase anaerobic metabolism. Lactic acid is often blamed for muscle soreness, but that idea is too simple. During hard effort, muscles produce lactate as part of rapid energy metabolism. Lactate is not merely a waste product. It can be used as fuel by other tissues and processed by the liver. The burning sensation during intense exercise is linked to changing chemical conditions in working muscle, while delayed soreness after unfamiliar exercise is more related to microscopic muscle damage and inflammation. Biology, as usual, refuses to let the simple explanation have the whole stage. Blood flow is essential for working muscle. Blood delivers oxygen and fuel, carries away carbon dioxide and heat, and helps remove or redistribute metabolic byproducts. During exercise, blood vessels in active muscles widen, allowing more blood to enter. The heart pumps faster and more forcefully. Breathing deepens. Hormones help mobilize stored fuel. Muscles may feel like they are acting locally, but movement draws in the lungs, heart, blood, nerves, liver, pancreas, and kidneys. Muscles also produce heat. When muscles contract, not all, energy becomes movement, some becomes warmth. This is why shivering helps raise body temperature. Rapid involuntary muscle contractions generate heat when the body is cold. Even ordinary muscle tone contributes to warmth. The body's ability to maintain temperature depends partly on muscles quietly turning chemical energy into heat. Movement is not separate from survival. It helps a person breathe, feed, escape danger, seek shelter, communicate, care for others, and maintain the body's internal conditions. Swallowing uses muscles. Facial expression uses muscles. Digestion uses smooth muscle. Circulation depends on cardiac muscle, and skeletal muscle contractions help push venous blood and lymph back toward the center of the body. Muscles are not just for strength or speed. They are how the body acts, stabilizes, warms, protects, and participates in the world. Every movement, from a heartbeat to a step, from a blink to a breath, depends on controlled contraction. Muscles turn nerve signals and chemical energy into force. They give bones motion, organs rhythm, vessels control, and the body a way to respond. Staying upright, staying warm, staying fed, and staying alive all depend on this living machinery, working quietly beneath the surface even when the body seems perfectly still. The body can be described through organs, systems, and tissues, but the smallest living level of the human body is the cell. Every heartbeat, breath, blink, step, immune response, thought, and repair process depends on cells doing their work. There are trillions of them, and they are not all alike. A nerve cell sends signals. A red blood cell carries oxygen. A muscle cell contracts. A skin cell helps form a barrier. A liver cell processes chemicals. An immune cell patrols for danger. The body stays live because these tiny units maintain boundaries, use energy, communicate, repair damage, divide when needed, and carry out specialized tasks. A cell is not just a little bag of liquid. It is an organized living space. Its outer border is the cell membrane, a thin, flexible barrier made largely of phospholipids and proteins. Phospholipids have one side that mixes well with water and another side that avoids water, so they naturally arrange themselves into a double layer. This creates a boundary between the inside of the cell and the fluid outside it. That boundary is essential because life depends on controlled difference. The inside of the cell must not be exactly the same as the outside. Embedded in the cell membrane are proteins that act as channels, pumps, transporters, anchors, and receptors. Channels allow certain ions or molecules to pass. Pumps use energy to move substances against their natural gradients. Receptors detect chemical signals such as hormones or neurotransmitters. These membrane proteins allow the cell to respond to the world around it without losing control of its inner chemistry. A cell has to be open enough to receive supplies and information, but closed enough to remain itself. It is a very small border policy, but with far better paperwork than most borders. Cells need energy to maintain this order. One of the main energy converting structures inside many human cells is the mitochondrion. Mitochondria are often described as powerhouses, which is useful, though a little overworked. More precisely, they convert energy stored in nutrients into a usable chemical form. In cellular respiration, molecules derived from glucose, fats, and other fuels are broken down through a series of reactions. Oxygen plays a vital role near the end of this process, helping mitochondria extract energy efficiently. The immediate energy-carrying molecule produced is adenosine triphosphate. Cells use adenosine triphosphate to power muscle contraction, nerve signaling, protein building, transport across membranes, repair, movement inside the cell, and many other processes. Without a steady supply, the cell cannot maintain its gradients, build its parts, or do its specialized work. This is why breathing, circulation, digestion, and metabolism all connect at the cellular level. The lungs bring in oxygen, the gut absorbs nutrients, the blood transports them, and mitochondria help turn them into usable energy. Mitochondria also carry an ancient story. The biologist Lynn Margulis strongly developed and defended endosymbiotic theory, the idea that mitochondria descend from bacteria that were once free-living. According to this theory, an early cell engulfed a bacterium, but instead of digesting it, the two formed a lasting partnership. Over evolutionary time, that bacterium became a permanent internal partner, eventually becoming the mitochondrion. Evidence includes the fact that mitochondria have their own small amount of deoxyribonucleic acid and divide in ways that resemble bacteria. Every breath therefore supports a partnership with very ancient roots. The cell's information is stored mainly in the nucleus. The nucleus contains deoxyribonucleic acid, the long molecule that carries genetic instructions. Deoxyribonucleic acid does not usually act by directly building the body like a tiny foreman with a clipboard. Instead, genes are used to make ribonucleic acid instructions, which help guide the production of proteins. Proteins then become enzymes, structural fibers, channels, receptors, motors, hormones, antibodies, and countless other working molecules. Ribosomes are the structures that build proteins. Some ribosomes float freely in the cell, while others sit on the rough endoplasmic reticulum. The endoplasmic reticulum helps make, fold, and process proteins and lipids. The Golgi apparatus then modifies, sorts, and packages many of these products, sending them to the right destinations. It's a little like a cellular post office, except far more efficient and much less likely to leave a mysterious note saying the parcel could not be delivered. Cells also need cleaning and recycling systems. Lysosomes contain enzymes that break down worn-out cell parts, waste material, and certain substances taken into the cell. This recycling is not merely housekeeping. It allows cells to reuse materials and prevent damaged components from building up. The cytoskeleton provides internal structure. Made from protein filaments, it helps the cell hold its shape, move materials around, divide, and sometimes move itself. It is scaffolding, railway system, and muscle-like machinery all at once. Cells communicate constantly. They respond to hormones, neurotransmitters, immune signals, nutrients, oxygen levels, damage, and physical forces. Some cells divide to replace worn-out or injured tissue. Others, such as many mature neurons, rarely divide and instead focus on long-term function and maintenance. Cells repair their deoxyribonucleic acid, replace damaged proteins, adjust their metabolism, and sometimes self-destruct through apoptosis if they are too damaged or no longer needed. Even cell death can be orderly and useful when it protects the whole body. This is the hidden scale where survival becomes chemistry. The heart beats because cardiac muscle cells generate and respond to electrical signals. Breathing works because muscle cells contract and nerve cells regulate rhythm. Immunity works because immune cells recognize, signal, move, attack, remember, and calm down. Healing works because cells divide, migrate, build collagen, and remodel tissue. Thinking works because neurons and glial cells manage signals and support the brain's chemical environment. The human body feels like one continuous self, but that self is built from trillions of small living units. Each cell is limited, local, and microscopic, yet together they create breath, warmth, memory, movement, defense, repair, and awareness. They do not need to understand the whole body to support it. They only need to do their own chemistry well, respond to signals, and remain part of the large conversation. In that quiet cooperation, ordinary molecules become living tissue, and living tissue becomes a body able to stay alive. Sleep can look like the body doing very little. The eyes close, the muscles relax, movement becomes smaller, and the outside world fades into the background. But sleep is not a simple shutdown. It is an active biological state, carefully organized by the brain and body. During sleep, the nervous system changes its patterns of activity, hormones shift, immune signals adjust, memories are processed, tissues repair, temperature changes, and energy balance is supported. The body is not off. It is working in a different mode. This is one reason sleep is so important for staying alive. A body that never rests cannot maintain itself well. The brain needs sleep for attention, learning, emotional regulation, and memory. The immune system uses sleep as part of its normal rhythm of defense. Hormones linked to growth, appetite, stress, and metabolism all follow daily patterns that are influenced by sleep. Muscles, skin, bones, and other tissues use rest as part of their repair and rebuilding cycle. Sleep is not laziness, it is maintenance with the lights turned down. Sleep is shaped by two major forces, circadian rhythm and sleep pressure. Circadian rhythm is the body's internal day-night timing system. One of its most important control centers is the suprachiasmatic nucleus, a tiny region in the hypothalamus. It receives information about light from the eyes and helps coordinate daily rhythms across the body. Light exposure, especially bright light in the morning, helps align this internal clock with the outside world. Darkness encourages the release of melatonin, a hormone produced by the pineal gland that helps signal biological night. Sleep pressure is different. It builds the longer a person stays awake. A key molecule involved is adenosine, which accumulates in the brain during waking hours and is linked with the growing desire to sleep. This is one reason sleepiness tends to increase across the day. Caffeine works partly by blocking adenosine receptors, which is a clever little trick, though not quite the same as actually resting. The sleepiness is not deleted. It is more like being told to wait in the hallway. Together, circadian rhythm and sleep pressure help determine when sleep feels natural. The circadian system says what time the body thinks it is. Sleep pressure says how long the brain has been awake. When both signals point toward your rest, sleep usually comes more easily. When they are misaligned, such as during jet lag, shift work, or late-night bright light exposure, the body may feel strangely confused, tired at the wrong time and alert when it would much rather not be. Sleep itself is not one uniform state. It moves through different stages, usually grouped into non-rapid eye movement sleep and rapid eye movement sleep. Non-rapid eye movement sleep includes lighter sleep and deep sleep. In lighter stages, awareness of the outside world fades and the body begins settling. In deep sleep, brainwaves become slower. Heart rate and breathing often become more regular, and the body enters a deeply restorative state. Deep sleep is especially linked with physical restoration, immune support, and certain kinds of memory processing. Rapid eye movement sleep is different. During rapid eye movement sleep, the brain becomes more active in certain ways. Dreams are often vivid, and most skeletal muscles are temporarily kept very still. This muscle quieting helps prevent the body from acting out dreams. Without it, a dream about running across a field could become an unfortunate bedside athletics event. Rapid eye movement sleep appears important for emotional processing, learning, memory, and brain development, although sleep science is still uncovering many details. The The brain also seems to use sleep for cleaning and fluid movement. Research associated with Mike and Nedergaard helped describe the glymphatic system, a pathway by which cerebrospinal fluid may move through brain tissue and help clear metabolic waste products. This system appears to become more active during sleep in animal studies, and it has become an important area of research in human sleep science as well. It should be described carefully because the full picture is still being studied. But the broad idea is compelling. Sleep may help the brain maintain its chemical environment by supporting the movement and clearance of waste. Hormones change during sleep too. Growth hormone is released especially during deep sleep and supports growth in children, as well as tissue repair, metabolism, muscle maintenance, and bone health throughout life. Cortisol usually follows a daily rhythm, tending to rise toward morning to help prepare the body for waking. Appetite-related hormones can also be affected by sleep, which is one reason poor sleep can disturb hunger, cravings, and energy balance. The body's chemistry is not separate from sleep. It is woven into it. The immune system also shifts during sleep. Immune signaling molecules, inflammation, and defense responses all follow biological rhythms. Sleep supports the coordination of immune activity, and lack of sleep can weaken some aspects of immune function. After vaccination, sleep may even influence how well immune memory develops. This does not mean sleep is a magic shield against illness, but it is one of the conditions that helps the immune system work properly. Even the best border guard within. The body needs a sensible schedule. Temperature changes are part of sleep as well. Core body temperature tends to fall as the body prepares for sleep, and warmth leaving through the skin can help that process. Heart rate usually slows during restful sleep. Blood pressure often dips, and breathing patterns shift with sleep stage. During rapid eye movement sleep, breathing and heart rate can become more variable. These changes show that sleep is not passive stillness. It is controlled regulation, with the body moving through different internal states across the night. Repair continues quietly during this time. Skin cells renew, muscles recover from use, bone remodeling carries on, the liver processes chemicals, the kidneys keep balancing water and salts, the brain reorganizes memories and tunes connections, cells repair proteins, clear damaged components, and manage energy. None of this means the body can only heal during sleep, but sleep provides a biological setting that supports many forms of restoration. The body stays alive by alternating between modes of activity. Waking is for movement, sensing, feeding, working, communicating, and responding to the world. Sleep is for regulation, restoration, memory, immune coordination, hormone timing, and quiet repair. The heart still beats, the lungs still breathe, the brainstem still watches, cells still use energy. The body is never simply switched off. Sleep is therefore one of the clearest examples of the body's hidden intelligence. It does not look dramatic from the outside, but beneath the stillness the night shift is busy. The body lowers its voice, changes its rhythm, and tends to the systems that make waking life possible. In sleep, survival continues softly, restoring enough balance for another day of breath, thought, movement, warmth, and life. A living body can be described in parts, but it never works as parts alone. The brain sends signals, but it depends on oxygen, glucose, blood flow, sleep, hormones, immune protection, and stable chemistry. The lungs bring in oxygen, but they need muscles to move air, nerves to regulate rhythm, blood to carry gases, and the heart to keep that blood moving. The heart pumps, but it needs its own oxygen supply, electrical timing, mineral balance, hormonal influence, and vessels strong enough to carry pressure. Every organ is important, but no organ survives by being important on its own. This is why integration is the real answer to how the human body stays alive. The body is not a collection of separate machines stacked neatly under the skin. It is a living network where each system both supports and depends on the others. The nerves guide muscles, glands, blood vessels, organs, and sensation. The blood delivers oxygen, nutrients, hormones, immune cells, heat, and waste products. The gut breaks food into molecules, but the liver processes those molecules, the pancreas regulates fuel, and the bloodstream carries the results to tissues. The kidneys filter and balance the blood, but they also help regulate pressure, acidity, salts, water, red blood cell production, and vitamin D activation. The immune system protects the body, but it needs blood and lymph to move its cells and signals. The skin forms a barrier, but it also relies on blood supply, immune defense, nerves, and repair cells. Bones support movement and protect organs, yet they're also living stores of minerals and places where blood cells are made. Muscles move the body, support breathing, help circulation, create heat, and allow feeding, escape, posture, and expression. Cells carry out the tiny chemistry beneath all of it. Sleep gives the brain and body a different mode of regulation, restoration, memory support, hormone timing, and repair. None of these systems is a spare detail. Each one is woven into survival. If oxygen arrives but blood does not move, cells cannot use it. If food is eaten but not digested, absorbed, processed, and transported, it cannot become fuel. If the heart pumps but blood chemistry drifts too far, rhythm and function can fail. If immunity is too weak, infection can spread. If immunity is too aggressive or misdirected, the body can damage itself. If temperature rises or falls too far, enzymes and cells struggle. Life is not just activity, it is controlled activity. The central principle holding this together is homeostasis. The body keeps many internal conditions within workable ranges. Temperature must remain close enough for proteins and enzymes to function. Oxygen must be supplied. Carbon dioxide must be removed. Blood pressure must be high enough to deliver blood, but not so high that it damages vessels. Blood sugar must provide energy without drifting too far in either direction. Water and salts must be balanced so cells do not shrink, swell, or lose their electrical stability. Acidity must be controlled so chemical reactions can continue. Immune activity must respond to danger without turning every small irritation into a full biological drama. Repair must seal damage without creating too much scar tissue or clotting in the wrong place. These ranges are not maintained by stillness. The body is dynamic. It changes constantly, breath by breath and heartbeat by heartbeat. Blood pressure rises and falls. Breathing deepens and slows. Blood vessels widen and narrow. Hormones rise and fade. Blood sugar shifts after meals and settles between them. Body temperature changes slightly across the day. Immune cells move in and out of tissues. The gut contracts. The kidneys adjust urine concentration. The brain changes its rhythms through waking and sleep. Stability is not the absence of change. Stability is change being managed well. This is one of the most quietly remarkable things about the body. It creates the feeling of ordinary continuity from endless adjustment. You may sit still in a chair, apparently doing nothing much at all, but inside the body's negotiating with gravity, air, water, heat, microbes, fuel, waste, pressure, and time. The muscles of posture make small corrections. The inner ear and proprioceptive system help track position. The lungs trade gases with the air. The heart distributes blood. The kidneys balance salts and fluid. The liver handles absorbed chemicals. The pancreas watches glucose. The skin monitors the outside. The brainstem continues its old work of keeping vital rhythms alive. It is a quiet miracle disguised as sitting down. The body also has resilience. Resilience means the ability to adapt, recover, and keep functioning when conditions change. After a meal, digestion begins, blood sugar rises, insulin is released, the liver stores and processes nutrients, and cells take in fuel. During exercise, muscles use more energy, breathing deepens, heart rate rises, blood flow shifts, heat increases, and sweating may begin. In stress, the sympathetic nervous system and adrenal hormones prepare the body for action. In heat, blood moves closer to the skin, and sweat helps cool the surface. In cold, vessels narrow and shivering can generate warmth. In injury, clotting begins, inflammation arrives, immune cells clear debris, and repair cells rebuild tissue. During infection, innate and adaptive immunity help recognize and fight the threat. During rest and sleep, the body shifts toward restoration, memory processing, hormone regulation, and repair. Across aging, systems adapt again, though not always perfectly. Bone density, muscle mass, immune function, hormone levels, blood vessels, skin, and cellular repair all change with time. Resilience is powerful, but it is not unlimited. Every system has thresholds. The body can compensate for a great deal, but not for everything forever. That limit is part of what makes life so delicate. The body is strong because its systems overlap and support one another. It is fragile because those same systems depend on balance. Too little water, too little oxygen, too much heat, too much blood loss, too much inflammation, too much pressure, too little fuel, too much acidity, or a broken signal in the wrong place can ripple through the whole network. Survival is not guaranteed by the presence of organs alone. It depends on those organs communicating, adjusting, and sharing the work. From the head to the feet, life is maintained by countless small corrections. The eyes and ears orient the body. The brainstem regulates essential rhythms. The spine carries signals. The lungs exchange gases. The heart moves blood. The blood carries supplies and defense. The immune system recognizes danger. The gut turns food into usable molecules. The liver and pancreas manage chemistry. The kidneys preserve the inner fluid world. Hormones send slower instructions. The skin protects the border. Bones support and produce blood cells. Muscles create action and heat. Cells perform the tiny work beneath every visible movement. Sleep restores and reorganizes. So the body stays alive not as a single object, but as a continuous cooperation. It's not one command, one organ, or one spark. It is sensing, responding, fueling, filtering, defending, warming, cooling, moving, repairing, and resting, all at once. Most of it happens below awareness, with no need for applause and very little interest in being noticed. Yet every calm breath and steady heartbeat is evidence of the same hidden agreement. Countless parts working together closely enough that, for another moment, the whole body remains alive. So how does the human body stay alive? Not through one single mechanism, and not through one hidden spark tucked somewhere behind the ribs. The body stays alive through coordination. It survives because countless systems keep adjusting to one another, quietly holding the inner world within the narrow conditions that life requires. Homeostasis keeps the body balanced. The brainstem watches over breathing, heart rhythm, blood pressure, swallowing, coughing, and alertness. The senses keep the body oriented in the world. Nerves carry messages between center and edge. The lungs exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide. The heart pumps blood through the lungs and around the body. Blood carries oxygen, nutrients, hormones, heat, immune cells, and waste products. The immune system recognizes danger. The gut turns food into usable molecules. The liver and pancreas manage fuel and chemical balance. The kidneys regulate water, salts, acidity, pressure, and waste. Hormones carry slower instructions. Skin guards the boundary between inside and outside while helping control temperature. Bones support, protect, store minerals, and produce blood cells. Muscles move, stabilize, warm, and breathe. Cells carry out the tiny chemistry beneath everything. Sleep restores, repairs, regulates, and quietly prepares the body to continue. Survival is not stillness. It is controlled movement. Air moves, blood moves, ions move, signals move, heat moves. Nutrients are stored, released, converted, and used. Waste is removed, tissues are repaired, temperature is adjusted, immune cells patrol. Molecules are built and broken down. Even rest is not emptiness, but a different kind of activity. The body feels ordinary because its most extraordinary work is hidden. It does not usually announce each heartbeat, each breath, each repaired cell, or each careful adjustment of salt and water. It simply keeps going beneath awareness, making life feel steady. And even in sleep, when the world grows quiet and the body seems still, that quiet work continues. Breath by breath, cell by cell, the body remains gently busy, keeping thought, warmth, memory, healing, breathing, and life in careful balance.